All right, we're going to go ahead and call to order and begin with a roll call for attendance. Director Banfield.
Present.
Director Barrows.
Here.
Director Decker, who I don't see in our participants list yet, but I know she is planning on being here. Director Strahl.
Here.
Okay. Dr. Strom, can I ask, please, would you let us know when, if you see Director Decker join us?
We will do that as soon as possible.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, so our first item on our agenda is student reports. So we're going
to jump in really quick. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
I just want to let you know, I might, when I have to walk around, I might be going off camera because I hurt my back really bad this week. That's all I want to let people know. Or maybe not.
I'm assuming that means you'll still be within hearing distance.
I will be.
Perfect. Thank you, Kamara. All right, so our first item on our agenda is student reports. So we're going to begin with the representative from Columbia River. I'm not sure if it's Riley Sharman or Maya Anson who's joining us today. It looks like it might be both of them.
Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Maya Anson, and I'm accompanied by Riley Sharman, and we are from Columbia River High School. Our prompt this month was to answer why we chose the school and our program we represent, and if given the chance, would we make the same decision again? I chose to go to Columbia River, not only because of the logistical reasons, such as my older siblings went there and it being within my boundary, but also because the IB program was something I really wanted to be involved in, as well as be a part of the CR experience that I saw my siblings be a part of growing up. If I could go back, I would certainly choose to go to Columbia River again. Our school has an amazing staff and student body, and I've really become a part of the CR community. To speak more in depth on our community, we feel that our strong family-like bond is our biggest asset, and the smaller population allows for more personable connections. Our smaller classrooms open more opportunity for one-on-one conversations with their teachers, and inversely, their teachers are less likely to be overwhelmed and more likely to be able to teach efficiently. We conducted a Google form and sent it out to our student body to see why they chose Columbia River, and most of our student feedback showed that the students were likely to gravitate towards our school because of our IB program, like myself, in pursuit of either the IB certificate or diploma. Columbia River also has a graduation rate of 91%, which is higher than the national average. And lastly, another big appeal of our school is our offer and encouragement to participate in our many foreign exchange opportunities for several languages, including Spanish, French, and German.
At Columbia River, we offer several music and art electives, which our students really enjoy. Columbia River offers a wide range of extracurricular activities, which allows students to exercise their passions and express themselves through different arts. Our school offers a wide variety of over 25 different clubs, such as Diversity Club, Green Team, Red Cross, Knowledgeable Club, DECA, etc. One of Columbia River's most honored clubs is our marketing club, DECA. For the last 10 years, our DECA students have qualified for state and in 2019 placed at nationals. Our Knowledgeable specifically does exceptionally well. We consistently make it to nationals. For example, in April, our Knowledgeable team placed among the top 10 in the nation and earned a spot in the virtual competition that tested in 5 subject areas: math, literature, science, geography, and history. Most of our individual athletes excel in district competitions, such as 7 of our varsity boys swimmers placed high at their state meet. River also has an ongoing record in boys and girls soccer making districts. Many of our athletes are motivated to stay in sports because of our amazing school pride. I left my home school and transferred to Columbia River because I gravitated more towards the IB program, and the smaller population felt more like a family opposed to attending a bigger school. If I could go back, I would certainly choose Columbia River again because of the family-built community and the variety of opportunities CRHS allows me to have. I'm beyond grateful to be a part of the CR family. We sincerely appreciate your attention this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Riley and Maya. Our next student representative is from Fort Vancouver, Michaela Smith.
Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Michaela Smith, and I am from Fort Vancouver High School, and I'm very eager to speak on this topic. Fort has an undesirable reputation. However, this reputation is not upheld within the school. I had my pick of schools my freshman year, and Fort was my last choice. I chose another school in the district, and I soon learned it wasn't for me. Second semester of my freshman year, I transferred to Fort, and this was the best choice I could have made. As you all know, Fort is an international school. Due to this, there is no discrimination because minorities are the majority. This brings us all closer together instead of separating us. Even though 70% of our students are economically disadvantaged and on free and reduced lunch, we can do everything other schools can. Our school teaches students to overcome adversity and embrace diversity. A large amount of our students are first-generation Americans and first-generation college applicants. We have trade programs such as welding and culinary. We have an amazing medical program and plenty of AP and college and high school courses that can help propel students into their futures. Our school and staff have so much heart. Every staff member puts their time, money, and energy into their students with a passion that is truly inspirational. I am a 3-season athlete. I run cross country, play basketball and softball. I'm also an NHS ASB president and attend Key Club. Every sport and club embodies the heart of our school. The advisors and coaches are passionate about more than just winning and push us to be the best versions of ourselves. My basketball coach, Mrs. Arlisa Hinton, has been more than my coach and has been a mentor for the past 4 years and has helped me through every challenge that I've had. My cross-country coaches, Mr. Frazier and Ms. Sears, are so kind and passionate about running and work so hard to make our team great and strong. Clubs work overtime just to put together drives and activities for our students that are disadvantaged as well as for our community. If I had to do it over again, I would choose Fort first without hesitation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mihaela. Our next student report is from Karen Gallegos from Hudson's Bay High School.
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Karen Gallegos, and I am from Hudson's Bay High School. Today's prompt was, why did you choose the school you're attending, and would you make the same choice again? And I just first want to start off with my school, and our school is always having new people, and this is good for getting more opportunities, exploring new ideas, and increasing knowledge. And the amount of support and cooperative, friendly people and staffs and teachers we have at our school is amazing. And this helps our students build confidence and learn new skills. And I think that that's great. And about our sports and clubs, we have many sports and clubs. We have so many sports, and one of our clubs includes ASB, and this has also built a lot of confidence with students. And would I make this choice again? Definitely I would, because when I was in middle school and I was choosing what school to choose from, I specifically chose Hudson's Bay, and I do not regret this decision at all, because ever since I attended Hudson's Bay, I was able to build new skills, learn new things, and I was surrounded by so many people, and our people at our school, staffs, teachers, and students are very friendly and are always willing to support and help everyone in our school. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Our next report is from Teddy Beavers from Skyview High School.
All right, you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Teddy, thank you.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Teddy Beaver, and I'm from Skyview High School. I spoke with a number of students at my school about why they chose Skyview and if they would again, and why. To start, many students at Skyview are in the SMT program, and they spoke about how it was a major factor in their decision to go to Skyview. SMT is a great program that provides advanced learning in topics such as science, math, and technology that you would not receive in your normal core classes. I also heard a lot of positives about AP courses. Skyview provides a variety of AP and other honor courses that can reward college credits. Also mentioned by multiple students was the community. Skyview is a large school serving over 1,700 students. Personally, I've experienced this and others mentioned it as well. When going to a school as large as ours especially, you meet kids from all different backgrounds and lives. I think this is one of the great things about Skyview High School. Speaking to the community, we do many spirit weeks, assemblies, and other events that create an atmosphere that makes our school something that kids can enjoy and really look forward to. Finally, extracurriculars. We have dozens of clubs at our school, such as culture clubs like Mecca, Asian Culture Club, and Black Student Union. And we have clubs for activities and things people are passionate about, such as DECA, Key Club, Debate Club, and Drama. We also have great sporting events. Multiple students spoke about the enjoyment they had during these experiences. The atmosphere created in the student section is something that is unmatched anywhere else in life. All in all, if presented with the choice, I would no doubt choose Skyview again. Thank you.
Thank you, Teddy. Our next student is from VSAA, Samantha Duncan.
Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Sammy Duncan, and I'm from VSAA. I chose to go to VSAA because of its amazing artistic opportunities. Since I was 4, I've been performing in musical theater, and I've always just had a passion for the arts. I chose to go to VSAA, and I don't regret it at all, and I would make the same choice again. VSAA has always seemed to be the place for me because my older sister also went there for middle school, and I got to visit a lot and experience all of the arts. So I'll tell you with the utmost confidence that VSAA is one of the best things that has ever happened to me, knowing the opportunities that I've experienced, the friends that I've made, and the things that I've learned. One of my favorite things about my school is its community. Because we are a small school, that means we can all be closer together. And there are always activities or events or just something that brings the whole school together through all of the grades. Teachers and staff are also a crucial part of the VSAA community, helping students grow their skills and find their passions. At VSAA, there are several art forms that we can specialize or focus in. These include literary arts, so writing, visual arts, moving image arts, or movie making, music, dance, and theater. At VSAA, it's required that we try each art form in a class so that we make sure that we have experience in all of them. And I'm really glad that we do this because if it wasn't for that requirement, I probably wouldn't have found the passion that I explore today. When I came to VSAA in 6th grade, I had my heart set on doing theater. I was going to do theater, and that was going to be the end of it. But because of the requirement, when I took my first MIA, or a movie making class, I was completely hooked, and I fell in love with MIA. And now filmmaking is one of my main passions, and I don't think I would have ever discovered that if I hadn't gone to VSAA. So those are the main reasons why I am proud to be an art schooler and student of VSAA. I've been able to hone my skills, learn new things, and build irreplaceable relationships. And I think my classmates have too. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. All right, our final report is going to be from Kiara Navarro, representing ITech.
Wendy, I think they have a sub, and that student is Zeb Wolverton.
Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, cabinet members, and community guests. My name is Zeb Wolverton, and I'm from ITech Preparatory. ITech is a very different school. We focus mainly on STEM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, and project-based learning. At ITech, we are very big on preparing students for the next level. Being a 6 through 12 school located in the same building, students have the opportunity to learn from upperclassmen and be mature enough for the next level. ITech also has early college and AP courses available as soon as the 2nd semester of 9th grade. ITech also has a lot of clubs, including robotics, a competition where students in teams of 3 to 6 design a robot using the design process and compete to complete objectives against other teams' robots. PE Club, which focuses on volunteering and helping out around the school. NHS, which is a club for highly capable students to help out around the school. The QSA, the Queer Straight Alliance, where people have a safe place to talk about how they're feeling, and many more clubs. iTech also gives students the ability to create their own clubs if enough people are willing to join, and a teacher will moderate the club. Clubs like Movie Club, a club full of movies and popcorn, and Game Club, a place where gamers of all kinds can compete or play with each other. Clubs like these have been created before. Students often create clubs for more time to hang out with friends and their favorite teachers. Our school has lots of amazing teachers and friendly students who are always willing to help. Since we are 6 through 12 middle school and high school students are always socializing and creating relationships. We have smaller grade sizes, which gives students and teachers closer relationships and more personalized learning. Teachers will be in check of your grades and always have open doors for helping with projects and fixing grades. iTech students, teachers, and paras are always willing to talk and be friendly during lunch or free periods. If I were to choose another school, I wouldn't. iTech is a very good fit for me. I learn best with hands-on learning, and iTech always has something for me to do. During this last year, I found it very challenging to do school without these aspects. However, both students and teachers were able to adapt and make a new normal, which we continue to do as the school year progresses. iTech helped me become a natural leader in ASB and receive a Clark County Youth Leadership Award, and robotics, which showed me the possibilities of engineering as a career path. If I didn't go to iTech, I would be a completely different person. iTech has shaped me into the person I am today. Thank you.
Thank you, Zev. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is citizen comments. Citizen comments is the time in our meeting where the board and administrative staff like to hear comments from the public. If you wish to address the board live during one of our remote meetings, you should email vpsboard.directors@vansd.org by noon the day of the meeting so that our staff can add your name to the list of speakers and provide additional instructions. Because most matters require fact-finding and review, the board is not able to respond to any public comments made at this time. Additionally, the state's Open Public Meetings Act restricts deliberation of topics that have not been placed on the publicly noticed agenda in advance. If follow-up action is necessary, the board will ask the superintendent to work with administrative staff to consider the information and respond accordingly. Speakers are asked to be respectful with their remarks. Personnel complaints and personal attacks are not permitted. The board asks that personnel complaints be submitted in writing. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to make your comments. If you hear a chime, please conclude your remarks. If you have additional materials you would like the board to review, please email them to vpsboard.directors@vansd.org. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community, and we thank you for your comments. All right, so the first speaker on our list tonight is Jeff Dixon. Jeff, can you hear me?
I can.
There you go.
Hello. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
This is a little bit weird for me, but anyhow, my name is Jeff Dixon, and I reside at 2415 Markle Avenue here in Vancouver. To the elected board members, Superintendent Webb, and all who are on this call tonight, my name is Jeff Dixon, and I reside within the district. I'm an employee of the district who's currently laid off. I am a school bus driver. I'm also a parent of 2 incredibly talented children within our district, and I wanted to bring a few things to your attention. First, from the employee perspective, it gets on my nerves a little bit that the state of Washington did give the district money for transportation funding, and even still, the bulk of us got laid off. I can only speak for myself, but unemployment just is not cutting it. It's exceedingly difficult to move forward or to make decisions when I do not know when or if my job will be back. The job market is all right, but the jobs in my field of expertise are few and far between. That said, in many of the interviews that I have had, I'm asked to make a verbal commitment to stay with the company for a period ranging somewhere around 6 months. I cannot make that commitment in good faith as I do not know the future of my job, so I don't get the job. And I'm not one to lie, even if it is to my own benefit. As a parent, I am finding the online learning situation to be more difficult every day. I cannot work during the normal workday because I am sitting and having to be with my children for their education and making sure that they are in class and doing their homework. They want to be with their classmates. They hate, and hate is a strong word, but they hate the online model of learning. They fight me to complete their homework, and I have to deal with the attitude as a result. It does strain relationships. When they do not understand something, they come to me. Sometimes I can help, but most times I can't. I mean, I'm not a teacher's aide. I'm not educated in Common Core. I graduated in 1997 when we did all of our assignments the old-fashioned way. I do my best, whether it meets the standard or it don't. The next issue that I do want to bring up is YouTube and other such programs that are completely available to our children on the district-issued iPads. They're not educational as a rule unless the teacher specifically records or assigns something in those venues. The numerous games are getting in the way of the educational experience for my children and many others, I'm sure. I, the parent, have had to block most access to their district devices because there's nothing that ITS can do other than to completely block access to the iPad or to the internet, pardon me. The third issue is honestly the teachers union. It stands to be another part of this whole equation. Dr. Webb says we are going back, and I appreciate that. But unfortunately, there's been a lot of pushback on that. This is now the second time that it's happened, and I understand the concern of health and safety. Those things do need to be taken into the decision. But the livelihoods of fellow employees, the sanity of parents should be considered as well. I was hired to be a bus driver, not a teacher's aide. I'm not getting paid either way. However, I'm expected to sit in limbo and wait to see what happens next. The teachers, administrators, Dr. Webb, a lot of people in our district are still getting paid. It's just a point. I thank you for your time. I have also submitted written comments to this effect.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Our next speaker is Noah Miller.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a statement to read. My name is Noah Miller. My address is 208 West 28th Street, 98660. I'd like to thank the board president, the superintendent, and the board of directors for the opportunity to speak and voice my concern on the issue of a fair and competitive bidding process. I was recently made aware of RFP 2020-064, which will be voted on by this board. For reference, this is the elevator maintenance and repair service contract for the school district. It is my understanding that the bid is supposed to be an unbiased and competitive process that benefits the school district and its taxpayers. After looking into the process of this bid, I'm concerned that it did not meet this criteria. The bid was advertised in the Columbian on 2 separate days, August 11th and August 18th, to which there were no responses. The single and only bid that was submitted was not in response to the ad placed in the Columbian, but rather to an email from the purchasing department soliciting a bid from a single company through a link that was provided. There was at least one other company seeking information on the bid who were not notified about the bid and did not receive any communication, email or otherwise, from the purchasing department concerning this bid. The company that submitted their bid did so without any competition and with extensive assistance from the purchasing department. Not only does this violate RCW 39.04 and the district's own bidding procedures, it is neither unbiased nor competitive. In addition, the contract will cost Vancouver School District over $120,000 more than what they paid the previous company for the exact same service. Add on to that an expected $25,000 in additional labor costs, expensive parts and upgrades, and as well as costly unknown expenses per the contract. Even indexing for inflation, the current bid is expensive and certainly not competitive, which is what you get when you have only one bidder, and they know that. For these reasons, I request that the board reject this bid and reopen the bidding in a manner that complies with RCW 39.04 and the district's own unbiased and competitive bidding procedures. By rejecting this bid, the school district can only win. By rejecting this bid, as elected officials, we'll be showing the voters, the employees of the school district, paraworkers, and volunteers that you are careful with the district's finances and that you care about the fiscal responsibility. I thank you for your time, and I yield it back.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Our next speaker is Christine Greger.
Am I on now?
Yes, yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay. My name is Christine Greger, and my address is 4301 Northeast 39th Avenue. I'm a parent of 4 children, 2 with special needs. There aren't enough hours in the day for my husband and myself to work. I have 2 part-time jobs teaching, both online right now. And for us to work, raise our children, be 2 different special ed teachers, and provide the expertise of multiple professionals. I've emailed the board and the superintendent more than once. My name's probably familiar. My daughter, Almanuel Greger, is 14 and in 8th grade. She's my primary concern right now. She has optic nerve hypoplasia from birth. She is blind. She has an epileptic seizure disorder and tactile dysfunction that make it challenging for her to touch objects. She cannot use an iPad, desktop computer, or other device to access schoolwork. She cannot read Braille, write, or see large print. She requires a one-on-one paraprofessional aid to attend school safely due to the risk of seizures and falling. In fact, she has 2 pins in her hip from a fall and a fracture from a couple of years ago. Her multiple permanent disabilities mean she cannot advocate for herself or her learning. Alma's IEP stipulates that she will receive 22.5 hours weekly of special education services and approximately 100 additional minutes of related services. This spring, for 11 weeks, she received no services. This amounts to at least 275 hours of lost educational opportunity. To date, I've heard nothing about compensatory hours. In June, I received a report card stating that my child had been engaged in remote learning. This is absolutely false and is a fraudulent claim on the part of the district. She attended a couple of social Zooms, and that was all that was ever offered to her. This spring and summer, parents of SPED children receive virtually no communication from the district. Ultimately, I started trying to find answers myself. That's when I started emailing people. Laura Bergeron, the director of SPED, told me on July 30th that meetings would be required of all parents of students with current IEPs to determine the necessity of in-person instruction this fall. Alma's meeting was September 9th. During the brief meeting, I agreed to about 12 hours per week, thinking it was a place to start, not a place she'd be stuck all year. My recent request for feedback on her progress, her service hours, and increasing her time at school was essentially ignored, and then the increased time was denied. I haven't heard from the middle school manager since last June. The rationale for the denial that I first heard on the 9th was that only 5 people can be in a classroom. This includes teachers, students, aides, everybody. This does not come from County Public Health. I spoke to Sarah Holmes directly, one of their educational representatives, on the 9th of September. And it is not stipulated by the Van SD K-12 decision tree. It does not cap small groups of in-person learning to 5 people. Most of Washington seems to be in an interminable phase 2 on the governor's plan. I've read the little stipulation about 5 people and gathering. Gathering refers to meeting people outside your home, not really work or school. If 6 people can sit at a table in a restaurant, if I can go to a movie theater or a bar, if I can get my hair cut, if 6 kids can be on a bus together, why can't more kids be in the classroom? My severely disabled daughter continues to lose 50% of her instructional time as stipulated in a legally binding document. If this continues, her net gain after subtracting last year's loss will be spread out to about 6.5 weeks of school over the entire year, 157 hours. It's shameful. Offer the hours, strike the 5-person rule, or modify it. Stop hiding behind it as a shield that obviates accountability. Hire more teachers, use more classrooms. Give her and severely disabled students an equitable opportunity to participate in learning this year. Please stop the discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greger. Our next speaker is Avis Horuse. Oh no, I apologize. I believe Avis is donating time to Linda Freeland. So can we get both of them maybe on the?
Both are being promoted now.
All right, thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Linda Freeland.
Hello, Ms. Freeland. Can we hear from Ms. Horuse first so she can see? She wants to give you her 3 minutes, I believe, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
Okay, let's have her speak first, and then you can get her 3 minutes too.
I yield my time to Linda.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask you to state your name and address really quickly for the record?
My name is Lynn. Oh, go ahead.
Which of us? My name is Ava Porges. I live at 2903 Main Street in Vancouver.
Thank you. Perfect. All right, Ms. Freeland, you now have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you at some point give me the ability to share my screen?
I don't know if we have that ability. Dr. Strom, is that possible?
I can do that when I'm the host.
If she has stuff, she can email it. If there is information that can be emailed and forwarded and then provided to the board.
Okay. Is it something that you could email us?
I will email it,
Okay.
but I mean, should I take part of my time to email it or?
No. When you're done, when
I'm finished. Absolutely. This is all available. I'll make that available.
Okay.
So I wanted to make a bullet pointed slide presentation, but I just ended up writing my thoughts. So I'm a paraprofessional at Columbia River High. I work with SPED, so I have not been furloughed. But I wanted to really speak on behalf of a student-driven mission and on behalf of the staff who are not currently able to participate in that. So at the last board meeting, I need to give some background first before I present the numbers. The last board meeting I attended, we were presented with a budget narrative that to justify the furloughs of some 450 district employees. For example, revenues associated with attendance and food service will be down for an unknown period of time. And so furloughs brought in $1.6 million over a certain period of time. I don't remember how long, maybe until the end of the year. But the point is making those cuts would save that amount of money. So we all understand that money is absolutely important, but more important is what drives the decision-making around how we use that money. I'm not talking about allocations, state and federal categories, et cetera. What I'm talking about is what motivates our spending. What are the beliefs that tell us what is and what is not possible? What informs those beliefs? So how can we even know the answer to that question? We have to look at the actions of the entity that we're trying to learn about. So obviously I don't have time to go into this deeply, so I'll just touch on a few points to illustrate my trying to answer that questions. I don't know if everyone is familiar with McCleary, but it was a decision that came down from the legislature after a suit by a couple. And the purpose of the decision was to improve education statewide, K-12 education. And funds were released to support smaller class sizes and a raise in salaries and wages to bring them in line for teachers, right? To bring that in line with other respective professions. And what happened at that point, well, I'm gonna have to go back to reading this. I can't speak for the teachers beyond, well, it was a struggle. let's put it that way. It coincided with union negotiations, and it was a struggle. It was a huge struggle. There was a strike, and there was just there was a huge struggle. And the negotiations were met with resistance at every level. And as gains were made in one area, the district attempted to subtract those gains in another. Then immediately after the negotiations were concluded and the contract approved, those at the top ordered a 33% reduction in special program paraeducators. And thereafter, the district fought vigorously to limit the ESP wage increase. The first proposal was under 5%. So ultimately, VASP secured a wage increase that was at least 35% lower than the increase received by teachers. And I don't mean I mean proportionally, I don't mean across the board. So my point here isn't to say that teachers got more than they deserved and classified less, but my point is to say that the district fought tooth and nail against using McCleary funds, which were expressly allocated by the state for teachers and support staff, to bring our salaries and wages into line with more respected, other respected professions. So why is this important? So basically here, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Every time there's a budget issue, it seems that there's a sort of a, one solution. That is to cut from the bottom. That is to say, okay, these people are expendable. They have nothing of value to bring to the table here, or they have a lot less of value. And so what we'll do is we'll cut wages, we'll reduce staff. Immediately after, I don't know, did I say that? We cut SPED staff by program paras by 35%. And so students who needed that support had less support. Students who can use the academic support and will benefit from the academic support were left behind. So I'm asking the question, are budget decisions driven by the goal of serving every student? Are they made based on the belief that some people are more expendable than others, that sacrifices are best made by people who are paid the least of any in this organization? So Dr. Webb stated at that meeting that money was difficult to move, allocations, etc. And that got me to thinking, if furloughs are possible, then salaries and wages can be adjusted such that furloughs aren't required and support staff can be mobilized to provide much needed support for students. So I am going to present the numbers now. And can I share? Oh, lovely, thank you. Oh, it says the host has disabled screen sharing.
Yeah, I sorry, Ms. Freeland, I think misunderstood. I don't think we can have you.
We have her email it. Yeah, just have her email the information to the board or to the superintendent's office, and we can get that information to the board.
But I can't get it out at the meeting today?
No, we're not set up to do that.
Well, I'll read the numbers then.
Okay.
So I went to a database and I looked at salaries. This is not as effective without the picture, but I designed a sliding scale so that every person in the district could share this sacrifice. And like, we don't have to fire anybody. We don't have to furlough anybody. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of people earning six-figure salaries. And if we look at the executive and we take, and I don't have time to go through the sliding scale, but they can contribute $275,932 for the 2020-2021 year. Instructional administrational can contribute $409,797. K-12 administration can contribute $1,247,092. Health and related services staff can contribute $169,477. And the totals for the district for the year 2021 is $2,102,298. So that can be used to bring back classified staff. We stop thinking in terms of top down, and if we think in terms of people who are working directly with students, bringing forward ideas of how to mobilize to serve those students, then we can, okay, then we can, this is a tough time for everybody. It's really difficult for students to learn. And I know we're talking about a 90% graduation rate coming up, but frankly, I don't see that in many students. I don't see that they're being successful. So I'm saying rather than wringing our hands and waiting for things to go back to the way they were, fighting over, you know, when are we going to go back or when are we not, we can bring people back. We can bring supplies. We've got supplies sitting in our alcove that are just sitting there. Students don't have them. We can go do home visits. We can bring, studies show that community outreach brings students closer to the learning.
I apologize, I'm going to interrupt you, but you're well over your time.
Am I? I am so sorry. Can I say my last piece? That's really, have I made my point? I hope I have. There's a great wealth of knowledge, creativity, problem solving that can be tapped if we don't just do the decision making from the top down, and if we have a budget that is motivated by student need, and if everybody is willing to share this load, people at the bottom, like this is their rent and their food. People at the top, okay, so you have less expendable income. That's all I'm saying. And I'll send this to you, and I'll probably be back at the next meeting so I can show it, because it's really stunning. So thank you for letting me go over time, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeland. Our next speaker is Ruth Ingebrandt.
Hi, my name's Ruth Ingebrandt. I live at 3016 Niels Court in Vancouver, Washington. I am a parent of 3 kids in Vancouver Public Schools. I am a taxpayer, and I'm also a furloughed employee from McLaughlin Middle School. I'm not here just speaking to you as a mom and as a taxpayer and as an employee. I'm speaking for those who cannot and do not know how to. I am here to speak about the parents who have 3 jobs and there's no way they can give their kids enough support to do online learning, because some of them didn't even graduate high school, and that's information you already know. Y'all that are teachers, school board people, you already know, right? You already know. For the families who don't have internet and never going to be able to afford it, they can't do school, there's no way they're going to be able to get in a board meeting. There's no reason that they would even know that there is one or how to access it. I'm here to speak for them. For the families who can't speak English, and even if they knew or had internet, I'm here to speak for them. I will be their voice. For Alma and her mother Christine, who already spoke, that's Mac, that's my school, that's my son's school. I'm glad she said something. I hope you were listening. For the starving kids left home alone, who only had access to eat during the school year, I'm speaking for them. They have come to me in the middle of grocery stores. They're hungry. They have brought me their iPads in the middle of grocery stores like Walmart and Fred Meyer. They are desperate. Their parents are calling anybody and everybody that will help them. They want the education, and you have employees that are waiting to give them that education. And for every admin and certified teacher and clerk and para and bus driver who's waiting to have staff brought back, I'm here to talk about why y'all need to listen and you need to bring staff back. I'm here to speak. I'm not just here to tell you what I think you're doing wrong. I'm here to speak life back into you as educators, because my job as a paraeducator is not only to help the most difficult, challenging kids get writing done and get math done, but it is to speak life into the educators of the classrooms that I support. And I know those of you that were teachers, you know you wouldn't have been able to make it. There are some times that you couldn't even go to the bathroom without your para there, and you know, because that's why you got that degree. You're there to help kids, and that's why we're here. We're sitting here and we're waiting to help those kids. To you that are the leaders in this Vancouver Public Schools Education District, you are the leaders, so you need to go ahead and lead us in a direction. You talked about leading us in a direction of equity. On October 13th, resolution number 869, I don't need to tell you, you already know, right? What did you say? We acknowledge our students of color, Black and brown students in particular, parents, me, community members, me in our district, still report experiencing and witnessing racism and hate speech in our schools. Data reveals inequities in representation of magnet programs, learning support programs, staff hiring, retention and promotion practices. We realize that structural racism is built into every structure in society, as well as the fabric of our schools. That's right, Vancouver Public Schools got racism. What are we doing about it? We must build anti-racism into the fabric in order to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and excellence in education. You can't have an education that's excellent when you're missing staff members. It's not excellent. There's no way it's ever going to be. The recent events in our community and world highlight the necessity that the district act now. When? Now, because y'all said now. And that means October 13th means now. That's what we're looking for. The community is watching you and we see that you're doing nothing. We are committed to change in order to truly live our vision of excellence in education. When? Now. You need to bring back this classified staff. We will help feed children. We will get kids going on their internet and they're learning online. We will visit homes. We already did that in March. You know we did. That's how VPS looks so good, because you got staff that's totally committed and wants to be there. We further commit to adopt an equity policy prior to the beginning of 21-22.
Ms. Ingebrandt, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. You've gone about 4 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm speaking to your educators' hearts. You know what you need, and we need you to lead us in that direction, and we're ready. We're ready to support you guys, to make Webb look good, to make the school board look good, but your job, according to the state of Washington, is to hold people accountable, and we're watching, and we need you to do that, because there's not equity in our school, and there won't be until you bring that staff back.
Thank you, Ms. Ingebrandt. Our next speaker is Mary Christine Ortega.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Mary Christine Ortega, and I live at 8608 Northwest 14th Avenue, 98665. Good evening, Dr. Webb and members of the board. I'm here today to plead my case and the case of clerical and support staff in VPS. Not just because we're considering bringing kinder students back to the buildings in a few days, but because enough is enough. Many can clearly see that furloughs and cutting hours is an attempt for the district to pad its rainy day fund. But what is this decision really costing? In my honest opinion, the higher ups are able and willing to make these decisions because it costs them nothing. At the end of the day, they're not the ones having to struggle through the unemployment process. They're not the ones having these internal struggles and battles. Like, do I wait this out to see if I can continue to do a job I love, but possibly not be able to pay my bills and keep a roof over my family's head? It seems like when there are cuts to be made, it always starts at the bottom with the lower paid workers, like what was mentioned earlier. The people who are actually in the thick of it doing the hard and messy work. Why does it not start the other way around if it needs to be done? Children are getting left behind. The people we're supposed to be helping are not getting helped as they should. The support is needed now. Actually, it was needed yesterday. And in my case, I work at one of the biggest elementary schools in Vancouver School District. I love my building, I love my coworkers, but my hours were cut in half, just like many other clerks. I want to be sure that you all understand what that means. Yes, I can't always get my work done, but it's more than just that. I'm the only fluent Spanish speaker in our front office of a dual language school. Working the front office, you build trusted relationships with your families. You know what they're going through, you know their backstories. I have families that call in and specifically ask for me because I speak their native language. I can provide them that comfort. There are even some families that don't feel comfortable enough to call and try to speak to someone who doesn't speak their native language. They'd rather hang up, get no help, and try again another time. Do you know how it feels to have to tell our families and staff that the person they need help from right now isn't here because their hours were cut? But they need to know. They need to know the truth, and so do you. Our community needs you to return support and clerical staff to their jobs, their full hours. We all play a critical role in helping students and families reach their greatest potential. We have willing staff and money to do more to help students stay engaged. Parents need to be supported as much as possible during these unprecedented, difficult times. Educators want and need the support staff help. Why are you not giving it to them? It's time to bring all of us back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. Our next speaker is Mary Posguy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry, my thing just rebuffered for some reason right when I was coming on. My name is Mary Posguy. I live at 105 Northwest 146th Street, Vancouver, Washington, 98685. Good evening, Dr. Webb, members of the board, fellow employees, and members of the community. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight regarding the balance between successful student learning and the safety of high-risk employees. I have worked as a paraeducator in the Vancouver School District for nearly 2 decades. For over the past 6 years in the capacity as a learning support para in the same building. I love my job and the students I serve. What I bring to this program is not only a historical knowledge of the program itself, but a personal knowledge of each individual student and their unique needs and goals, as well as solid, amazing relationships I have worked to build with my students consistently over the years. My commitment to them is something I do not take lightly. But I am also a mom, and living in my home is my son, Matt, who has both cystic fibrosis and an immune deficiency. As you can imagine, just one of those conditions alone makes him extremely high risk for not surviving COVID. With both my husband and my younger son being first responders, my family has already been fractured. My husband has moved out of our home and my son hasn't been home for months, just in an effort to keep our house safe, a safe place for Matt. Now with the return to students to the building and the current district policy, I am faced with a seemingly impossible decision. Put my son's life at risk or turn my back on my responsibilities and commitment to my students who are already among the most vulnerable impacted by this terrible situation. Taking family medical leave seems to be the logical choice in keeping my son safe, but it is a choice that weighs heavy on my heart. Because make no mistake, it will drastically impact the learning support program, including my teacher partner who is already overburdened, and it will completely disrupt students' learning with the kiddos in this program. I'm sorry, it's been an emotional week. I have heard that I need to do what's best for my family and that the district will get by. And while that holds some truth for the building and the staff, it does not hold true for the students we serve. I am not interchangeable, not without consequences anyway. There is a solution to this problem, however. I have offered to take only a partial leave of absence if I could continue to instruct those students social distance learning from the safety of my home, something that I have been doing effectively and efficiently since last March. I currently work a 6.5-hour position. This solution would allow me to continue to serve our students while keeping my own at-risk son safe. It would eliminate any disruption to students learning in the student population that is already severely impacted by COVID. It will decrease the level of burden on my teaching partner brought about by the continued fluidity of the situation. And it will continue and actually better meet the needs of both the building and our students. It will also create a temporary 3.5-hour position for someone who is otherwise without hours. I was informed that the district will not consider this type of hybrid model. It is disheartening to know that there are employees who want to work, want to continue to serve our students and be a part of a solution in this difficult time, but find no flexibility to do so. I implore this board to urge the district to reconsider their position regarding high-risk employees during this unprecedented situation, to take a path that leads to both optimal student learning and safety for those of us high-risk dedicated employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Posgay. Our next speaker is Shelley Moody.
Hi, it takes a second to get you on as a panelist. My name is Shelley Moody. My address is 11606 Northwest 4th Court, Vancouver. I hold many hats related to the Vancouver School District. I'm a teacher, I'm a union building rep, I'm a parent. I have 2 elementary-aged boys. Today I speak to you with my parent hat on. My kindergarten son is high risk for serious complications if he should contract COVID-19. Today, the Clark County Public Health Department reported we're at 171 cases. For those who don't know the data deeply, I'm a numbers geek, so I keep track of them. That data is from 6 days ago. That's the way the state set up the reporting. Today's rate is 233. This is a 36% increase, and it's accelerating rapidly. Yet tonight, you're going to hear a plan to bring our kindergartners back in the building on Monday. I'm being asked as a parent to decide between keeping my child physically safe or getting him an equitable education. This shouldn't be a decision I have to make. But hear me out. The plan you will hear provides my child 180 minutes for the whole week. But the kids who go back in the building, they get 420. That's a big difference. He will get 43% of the instruction that his peers will get. At the beginning of the year, the district told parents that a fully remote option would be available. But 43% of an education is not equitable, it's not fair, and it's not an appropriate public education. My child at this point, he's bonded with his teachers and his classmates. Switching schools or moving to homeschool would break his heart. He's lost enough. We want to maintain the connections, but we need to ensure that he gets the education he deserves. My son's medical condition shouldn't require him to risk his life to go in the classroom to get a good education. Nor should it require us to switch schools or districts or to homeschool him. He has a right, legally, to a fair and appropriate quality public education. We don't want to leave the amazing teachers and friends at Lakeshore, but how does a parent decide about their child's physical wellness and social attachments or their education? I implore the board to reject the plan and have district administration go back and find an equitable plan. One that doesn't require teachers to do 2, really 3 or 4 full-time jobs simultaneously while risking their own health and well-being during this really dangerous spike in Clark County. I am asking for a delay in the return of kinders until the board can provide a legally supported, fair and appropriate public education with equity for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moody. Our next speaker is Stephen Lauder.
Hello. Can you hear me then?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, welcome. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And thank you for the task that you are that you face in these very difficult times. I wish there were easy answers to all of the questions that you've heard. There aren't, and I know that the district is in good hands, so congratulations and Godspeed on all that. Also, congratulations on the wonderful presentation of the students tonight. That was amazing and heartening. It does the heart good. Tonight, I wanted to give the board just a heads up. We're going to have a meeting, and I don't know whether we can do it on the 17th or not, For those who don't know me, I'm the search consultant for the superintendent position for Vancouver Public Schools. But for the board tonight, I want to just give you a little heads up. A couple of the important tasks that I want you to be thinking about. The board will need to define the qualities and characteristics they would wish to see in the next superintendent. That may be approachable, it may be someone who has experience with bonds, it may be somebody who has good fiscal knowledge, curriculum and instruction, friendly, sometimes people say is a kid person. Those are the kinds of things that board members come up with. Only you will know what those qualities and characteristics are, so begin to think about those so we can compile that. It's a very important part of the process in which we use to help not only recruit, but to sort out the applicants for you. The other thing that's also very important, be thinking about the stakeholder groups, the key communicators, the people that you want to reach out to and ask them to be part of this process. It could be PTA, it could be mayor, police chief, fire chief, it could be your equity committee. There's a long list of people that fall into and groups that fall into the stakeholder groups. That's an important part of the process as well. And I know tonight you can't speak, but in the near future, we'll have a chance to discuss some of these things in detail. And I just wanted to get you thinking about those two key items so that you would have something to speak about at the time when we can meet. Thank you very much and best of luck in these very difficult times. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Louder. All right, our final speaker is Alana G.I. Simmons.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. I was buffering. My name is Alana Glenn Iturbide Simmons. My address is 2024 Northeast 107th Street, Vancouver, 98686. I'm a parent of a little boy in the ECSE preschool program in his second year. He has autism and he's 4 years old. I'm also an attorney in this community. I wanted to speak tonight about the return to hybrid learning for specifically for the preschool pre-K kids, the ECSE program, which is comprised of special needs children. I'm in contact also with Jamie Phelps, Allison Abernathy, and Director of SPED, Laura Bergeron. I'm concerned about the hybrid return to programs, which is supposed to begin December 1st, which I understand is after the kindergarten return that Ms. Moody already spoke about. And I'm specifically concerned that the decision on the program timing was done without regard for parents and the needs of families, specifically concerning preschoolers. Oftentimes they'll have a morning program. My son's in ABA, autism therapy, every morning, and there was reason why he's been in the PM program of ECSE last year and this year. Now the announced hybrid model is only going to be in the mornings. There is no PM program that is offered. I've submitted a proposal to, rather than having the AM preschool program on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the PM program on Thursday, Friday. Instead, perhaps they could have the AM program be in the AM on 2 days, and then the PM program be in the PM 2 days, because again, I'm not the only parent of students that have a reason or a commitment of their children for the other time. And this would also equally apply to folks that specifically want to continue remote learning, because now the remote learning program will only be in the afternoon, as if someone wants to do an AM time, they have to do in person. And so again, to have an equitable solution for all families, whether they want in person or remote learning, they should have the AM be in the AM and the PM in the PM. And again, 2 days a week, that's fine. That's something. That's more than our children are getting currently. But I am specifically concerned also with basically the seat of your pants approach that the administration has taken to getting all of this implemented without concern for the stakeholders in the community, the parents, the families, even the teachers. And I'm not the only parent who feels this way. I would appreciate, especially you have the ability to conduct surveys of families, to speak with the families involved, rather than unilaterally deciding to have these programs from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. 2 days a week, regardless of which program a preschooler is in. Also, the fact that I also found out today from my child's teacher that meals will not be done at the school is very concerning. Preschoolers need time to eat with their class, and especially if they're being bused, having a 3-hour program and an hour of busing on either side with no meals being provided is very concerning. Thank you for your attention to these matters.
Thank you very much. All right, so that concludes our citizen comments portion of our meeting. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of minutes. We have, looks like 4 sets of minutes to approve: June 29th, June 30th, July 14th, and August 4th of 2020. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion. This is Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on approval. Director Banfield?
I'm sorry, I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, fair enough. Director Becker? Barrows? Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approved. You're just being efficient. That's all, Wendy.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
I will also vote to approve, so the motion passes. All right, and that brings us to consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Kathy. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, so we'll vote to approve the consent agenda. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
And I also vote yes. So consent agenda is approved. All right, that brings us to our first item of regular business, which is to conduct a first reading to adopt revised policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences.
And unless there are any questions regarding the policy, we will waive the reading and bring back for approval at the December 8th board meeting.
Okay. That was reviewed in our last workshop as well. So, all right. So then our next item is a recommendation to award bid number 2020-055 for reader boards and monument signs at Ogden, McLaughlin, Marshall, Lincoln, iTech, Fir Grove, King, and Truman schools.
On September 22nd, 2020, formal bids were received and opened for the purchase and installation of reader boards and monument signs at McLaughlin Middle School, Marshall, and Lincoln Elementary. In addition, reader boards will be installed on existing monument signs at Ogden, iTech, Fir Grove, King, and Truman. In total, 3 bids were received. Inline Commercial Construction Incorporated of Aloha, Oregon, submitted the lowest qualified bid. A copy of the bid tabulation is attached. The project is part of the 2017 bond program. District staff and consultants have reviewed the bids, and it is recommended to accept the lowest bid or qualified bid. The funding source is the Capital Projects Fund. It is the recommendation of the District Board of Directors award bid number 2020-055 to Inline Commercial Construction Incorporated of Aloha, Oregon for the purchase and installation of said reader boards and monument signs in the amount of $317,575 plus Washington State sales tax and authorize the superintendent to execute the appropriate contract documents.
All right, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
And I also vote yes, so the motion passes. Our next item is the recommendation to approve purchase agreement number 2020-082 with King County Directors Association from Kent, Washington for field improvements at Skyview High School.
The varsity and junior varsity baseball fields at Skyview High School continue to experience drainage issues that were identified prior to the 2017 bond. This has required the baseball teams to travel to off-site locations for practices and/or games. The scope of the project includes the purchase and installation of drainage improvements on each of the two fields. The district will utilize King County Directors Association, otherwise known as KCDA, a cooperative bid contract for this purchase. The funding source is the Capital Projects Fund. There's a recommendation that the Board of Directors approves a contract through a KCDA cooperative bid for the purchase and installation of the under drainage system at Skyview High School in the amount of $409,200 plus Washington State sales tax, and authorize the superintendent to execute the purchase agreement.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
This is Kathy. I'll second.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the vote. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
And I also vote yes. The motion passes. The next item on our agenda is recommendation to approve purchasing agreement number 2020-075 for Walnut Grove Furniture.
The rationale is to meet the needs of the Vancouver School District capital programs and construction at Walnut Grove Elementary. The district will purchase furniture to provide the school and students with products needed for their education and enrichment through their time at the facility. The district will utilize the King County Directors Association, E&I Cooperative Services, National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance, Omnia Partners, Buy Board, and TIPS Purchasing Cooperative bids and contracts for these purchases. The funding source is the Capital Program Fund. It is the recommendation that the Board of Directors award a purchase agreement to meet the district capital programs and construction at Walnut Grove Elementary in the not to exceed amount of $1,665,000 plus Washington State sales tax to Portland, Oregon, to provide furniture needs and to further authorize staff to amend project requirements to meet district needs as required.
All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second. This is Kathy.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
I also vote yes, so the motion passes. That brings us to our last item of regular business, which is the recommendation to approve new names for Leaser Campus and Fir Grove Vista.
Two district schools, Fir Grove Vista and Leaser Campus, will be closing and moving to different locations. The move to new locations provides an appropriate opportunity to rename both schools. In addition, school leadership and staff members desire refreshed names as they anticipate new beginnings with their students. Attached are supporting documents regarding the renaming of Fir Grove Vista and Leaser schools, consistent with policy 6970, naming schools, facilities, and mascots. The board has reviewed 3 to 5 name recommendations brought forward by the superintendent. The board reviewed those names on October 20th, 2020 at their board workshop. is a recommendation that the Board of Directors approve the renaming of Leeser Campus and Grove Vista as Heights Campus and Jim Tangeman School, respectively.
All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
How about a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the vote. Director Banfield?
Approve.
Director Barrows?
Approve.
Director Decker?
Approve.
Director Sproul?
Approve.
I also vote yes, and the motion passes. All right, that brings us to the end of our regular business. So the next item on our agenda is a superintendent's report, which will be delivered by Dr. Strom on kindergarten in-person learning.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to, let me get my notes here correct and move things around. Let me share the screen. Staff and principals this evening will share the planning for transitioning to in-person instruction for kindergarten students, EL, homeless, and academically at-risk students, as we have not been able to engage these students at all. We will review public health guidance and research findings, safety protocols and updates, remote streaming solutions, and professional development being provided. As well, we will review kindergarten district and school A and B pod data from the intent survey administered to parents and school and district services to at-risk tier 2 and tier 3 learners. The team and I are confident we can successfully make this transition to small group in-person learning and protect the health and safety and well-being of students and staff. We are following the guidance of Washington State Department of Health. Our prevention and mitigation planning and VPS response plan are consistent with state and local health department planning. We have been closely monitoring the guidance provided and update our systems and supports as quickly as possible. School districts across Clark County have been conducting in-person instruction since the start of the school year. Approximately 2,000 kindergarten and special services students attend school in Evergreen School District in small groups and have been doing so for the last month and a half. Recently, Battleground, as recent as yesterday, Battleground, Camas, and Washougal School District started kindergarten in person, and La Center started kindergarten in later October. Vancouver School Districts started modestly to support small numbers of students receiving special services. We are now serving approximately 300 students across the school district in small pods. Additionally, limited extracurricular activities have been allowed in person where we could safely plan, manage, and monitor small pods of students. To our knowledge, there has not been one trace to transmission case in Clark County Public Schools that has been linked to a student. I got it.
Stop the share and restart.
I'm gonna have to restart my share here this second. Do we have it? Or? Okay. I believe you have it now, and we should be on the screen that says Washington Department of Health guidance. The decision tree provides, the Washington State Department of Health decision tree provides guidance in cases where the numbers are over 75 cases per 100,000 people in the county, strongly recommending remote learning with the option for limited in-person learning in small groups or pods of students for the highest need students, such as students with disabilities, homeless students, students farthest from educational justice, and our youngest learners. Our planning is consistent with the Institute for Disease Modeling research findings that the countermeasures of symptom screening, masks, social distancing, and appropriate hygiene and cleaning practices are all priority mitigation efforts that we have put in place. The findings indicate that in-person learning was not more risky than remote learning, and that the children under the age of 10 were less susceptible to contracting COVID. Additionally, our planning is consistent with the Center for Disease Control guidelines and core indicators and the key mitigation strategies recommended. We have focused our efforts on the 5 mitigation strategies noted, including required and consistent and correct use of masks, social distancing, hand washing, cleaning and disinfection, and collaboration with Clark County Public Health and contact tracing. With all of these measures as a priority, Lindsay and Nicole will share with you our updates to our safety and protocol planning and provide additional information about the health room annexes that have been developed at each school. So with that, Lindsay and Nicole.
Good evening. So first we want to just quickly overview the mitigation and prevention plan that is in place already. This plan is accessible by all VPS community members and employees via the district webpage. It is continually updated as new information or best practices are developed. And a current addition that will be included, and one that is welcomed by many, as we have discussed with them, are risk assessments to describe which personal protective equipment is to be worn by those particular positions for a specific task. We are currently finalizing those with the stakeholders who would be involved with that, and those will be added to the plan as well. Thank you, Nicole. Lindsay here now. So that was the mitigation and prevention plan that Nicole was just discussing. We also have the response plan, which is what we use when there is somebody who is symptomatic or has had a close contact or is positive. So this is also accessible via the VPS webpage, and it is continually updated to include all Washington Department of Health guidance. We recently added in a frequently asked questions section as well, which helps clears up some of the confusion and close contacts versus isolation and quarantine. So that brings us to the health room annex, or the HRA. So this is the isolation room. This is what we're calling them, is the health room annex. So the mitigation and prevention plan and the response plan, those are really broad. As we talk about the health room annex, it gets a little bit more specific and a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of each school. So to start with, when students are coming into school through the thermal cameras, If there's a high temperature reading, so there's a person manning the desk, if there's a high temperature reading that triggers on the thermal cameras, they take the student, they set them aside, give them a couple minutes to cool down, take their temperature with a handheld, and if it is high, above 100.4, they are taken to the health room annex. If it is low, they just needed a second to cool off, they are sent on to class. So that is how the thermal camera protocol will operate. So on to general operations of the health room annex. So this is something that we discussed at length, whether or not we wanted to have, much like we have in the mitigation and prevention plan, we have kind of everything all at once. The thing with the health room annex is every school is different. Every school is going to have a different area that they choose for their health room annex. And every school is going to need to make things specific for their location. So our template document does offer a lot of guidance for what people are going to need to consider. And that includes room selection, when and how to send a student to the health room annex should they need to, HRA monitors and how they are to put on and take off PPE if they need to enter the health room annex, a plan for supervision of the students, training for building staff on where the health room annex is, and then more specific training for any HRA monitors, as well as a self-audit and submission to us in environmental safety to review their plans. So the self-audit is them going through a checklist, making sure that they have considered many different scenarios. The last bullet point is the cleaning and disinfecting of the health room annex. So during the daytime, and this is all detailed in that HRA specific protocol that the schools are putting together. In the daytime, they need to detail out the cleaning or how it will be cleaned and disinfected when a student has left the health room annex during the time, so their parent has picked them up. So there will be a process for that, and various schools, as an example, have utilized a red-green card. So a red card meaning, yes, a student was in this particular stall of the health room annex. It needs to be cleaned. When it's turned green, it's been cleaned and disinfected and is ready for another student to enter that particular area. The daytime cleaning will also include a restroom that is being designated for occupants of the health room annex. They will go ahead and disinfect that as well during the day. In addition to that, it will be added to the regular evening cleaning that the custodial run includes. And that will be for, so the health room annex, so they will clean and disinfect it again. And they will also ensure that the personal protective equipment or PPE included in the health room annex PPE box has been restocked and has the proper numbers that is needed. Lastly, they will do a daily health room annex attestation, which will go through and they will certify that, yes, I have cleaned and disinfected the health room annex and associated areas, and I have verified that the PPE has been restocked in the health room annex PPE box. And that concludes our portion. Thank you.
Dr. Webb, are you, Dr. Webb, sorry, Dr. Strom, are you wanting us to wait with questions until the end of the presentation so that, I'm asking because I want to make sure that Nicole and Lindsay are available if we have questions.
They will be available. I would prefer to wait to the end and then we can come back through. Yes, everybody's going to be available.
Okay, just double checking. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear to begin with. I'm going to ask Christina and Matt to address the remote streaming and continued work in this area to support teaching.
I'm going to turn it right over to Matt.
Okay.
Thank you. With the kids coming back in the upcoming week, we had set up a 2-hour webinar focused on all pre-K and 5th grade teachers. The digital learning coaches presented a webinar showing all current technology that is currently being used in the Remote 2.0. So in this 2-hour session, there was no new technology presented, just ways to utilize what was already being done. focusing on options, and some of the goals were find one way that, or one method that would be presented that you could take and build upon and practice after that training, focusing on the morning meeting within the classes, flexible learning groups, how to possibly work with small groups in class and in the Zoom, referenced as the Zoom kids and the room kids, and possibly using rotations. And so they were presented in these 2 hours on options and saw examples of setup from teachers that were demonstrating certain different programs that are used in the school, from iReady to Seesaw, and on those activities and those programs. That was, again, all presented by the digital learning coaches. Some of the takeaways from that training yesterday were ones that focused on the teachers, our comments, finding that right balance between technology and in person. There's a lot of comments coming back about how it would be something definitely new, nerve-wracking, nervous for them, but they were all aware that they had been using these in just a different, maybe using a different camera in the Zoom meetings, and then with that they're teaching those live in class sessions. One of my favorite comments coming back was, and I take this as a compliment, honestly, I had already taught myself most of what was shared today in order to survive distance learning. So I guess it just reiterated what I already know. And that was the focus of that webinar, was to let those teachers know that they already do know these things, and they are doing a lot of these things in the classroom already. The digital learning coaches are also already planning support sessions later in the week for those kindergarten teachers who want more hands-on instructions through Zoom with those coaches to allow them to practice in those sessions in the upcoming weeks prior to our upcoming week this week, and continuing into the sessions next week when they come back, along with the K through 5th grade teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to move to just sharing some of the data relative to specifically kindergarten APOD and BPOD data. I know the board had received some data previously. The A and the BPOD intent survey data is illustrated in this slide here. There are 79 classrooms across the school district with APOD in-person average of 7 students and a BPOD in-person average of 7 students. You would note that, yep. And then the averages are listed for each elementary school below. The N is the number of, for each of those schools, is the number of kindergarten classrooms. As a reminder, the families that did not respond to the intent survey were defaulted to an in-person student. So if on average across the district, one of the non-responding families per kindergarten pod chose to stay in remote learning, the average A and the B pod size would decrease to 6 students. The remote average would increase to 2 students respectively. We defaulted to this so that we get a more accurate picture of the high side of what an in-person could be for a particular school or even a particular classroom. The range of pod sizes is noted at the bottom there for all elementary schools for the A and the B pod. There was a maximum of 11 students at one school in each of the A and the B pods across the system. Or stated another way, there are only 2 of the 158 pods, because you have 79 A and 79 B pods. There are only 2 of the 158 pods that are over 10 students. And that's assuming that all of those students would be in person, of which, as it's illustrated in this spreadsheet here, that is not the case. The range, while we put for purity's sake the range at 11, technically the range for the majority of those pods is between a minimum, for A pods, a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 11. And for the B pods, a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 11 as well. Like I said, those are just one-offs, and right now those are at 10 as in terms of in-person. But if I took a look at Truman, for example, we made some assumptions there that and they didn't all respond, that they were put in the in-person. In fact, there may be one or two that are going to be in remote. It would reduce the Truman average potentially down to about 8, and increase the remote average for Truman up to at least 2 or 3. So it just depends on choices that are being made by parents that we did not hear from. The next slide here speaks more specifically to a sample, and here you have Anderson. Principals were provided additional data by each individual class, and the SIS team did a wonderful job of identifying those families that did not respond, and schools are following up with each of those families to determine, in fact, whether or not they're going to be in person or in remote. So we are following up with them. At this time, I'm going to ask Deborah to speak to the kindergarten pod schedule and student day. And there are a couple slides that she's going to take here.
Okay, and I am going to be turning this over to the principal work group that spent a lot of time on this, and starting us off is Bobby Ginty.
Good evening, Bobby Ginty, Principal Marshall. Glad to be back with you all. I was here for our hybrid presentation a few weeks ago, and have been lucky enough to be able to work on this kindergarten part as well. Just introducing a little bit, we have divided into, like they said, 2 pods, an A pod and a B pod. So students attending in person on Monday and Tuesday, and then a second group attending in person on Thursday, Friday. Each pod attends the 2 days a week, 3 hours per day, so 8:30 to 11:30 at 19 schools. And then, of course, Lincoln and Minnehaha will attend at their regularly scheduled time. We will have lunch to be picked up on their way out of the building. So when they finish, they'll be able to pick up their lunch and breakfast for the following day. Those are prepared at those 8 sites. And we will also be having a snack available for students during their 3 hours. Their day will largely look to the academics of English language arts and math, and they'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. And I'll let Heath go ahead and finish up the rest of this slide.
Heath, you're up.
Sorry, Heath Engelbeck, Salmon Creek Elementary School, forgot to hit that mute. Wednesdays will remain as they are now, as fully remote, where students are engaged through asynchronous and synchronous work via Zoom. And remote learners on those days of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday will still receive a minimum of 30 minutes of live instruction daily and an additional live lesson on Wednesdays.
Okay, and the next slide, Mike, Patrick Connors is going to start, and Katie Arkush will finish up.
Thank you, Patrick Connors, principal at Chinook Elementary. Just wanted to touch a little bit on what you might expect to see from your students or the students in kindergarten as they return to that instruction in person. We're looking at flexibility within the school, so these are general guidelines, but not necessarily specific to each school. During that 3 hours, we're looking at 60 minutes of English language arts instruction, another 60 minutes of math instruction, and we recognize that, of course, our kindergartners are going to need breaks, so there'll be breaks and a snack as mentioned in between there. Additionally, we recognize that these are the first times our kindergartners will be in a school setting like this. So we expect our teachers will be setting aside time for that social, emotional development, along with teaching some of those basic school expectations. We can't take for granted that our students come to us knowing what it's like to be in a school and how to prepare for that. So we know that it's going to take some time to adjust for them to get used to a school setting. I'm going to turn that over to Katie Arkush to talk a little bit about what the FAB schedule would look like for the day, as well as possible distance learning opportunities.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm Katie Arkush. I'm the principal over at Sarah J. Anderson Elementary.
And when we were thinking about the afternoon for our students, we really wanted to ensure that we were offering flexibility for teachers and giving them some time to connect with either students that are fully remote or students that are on the off pod day or off APOD, BPOD day. Also, we wanted to try to provide some consistency for families, and so we tried to keep the FAB schedule as it was on our original district remote learning. So FAB will be asynchronous at the same time as typical, and students can access the live Zoom meetings with their FAB teachers. It's possible that teachers could use that afternoon time to have that 30-minute Zoom with their with the kids that are not there, or they could do small group lessons. They can use it to connect with families. It's really a flexible time for teachers to ensure that they're able to do all the things that they need to do and juggle all the different balls that they need to juggle. And I'm going to turn it back over to Bobby.
Yeah, thanks, Katie.
Just one closing remark. As principals, we talked a lot about the importance of having some grace and flexibility for our kindergarten teachers at this time. They're pivoting to a platform now that is even different yet again than what they started this school year with. So what we know is that it won't be perfect when they first start with this type of a schedule, but we just want all of our staff to know that how much we're behind them and how much support that we have there for those, for our learners, for our teachers, and for our families as we transition into this next phase.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. Mike, back to you.
Thank you. And I've asked Laura Bergeron to talk about preschool in person for our youngest learners. So Laura would
Yep.
jump on. Thanks.
Yep, Laura Bergeron. I'm the Director of Special Education, and currently the district has 8 early childhood special education classrooms. 6 are located at Marshall and 2 are located at Ogden. We set out to align our program as closely as we could with the kindergarten program. Our programs typically run Tuesday through Friday, and we have a morning and afternoon sessions. So our schedule will be 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. And we decided that the AM kids would come on the Tuesday, Wednesday days. Our PM students would attend on the Thursday, Friday groupings. Mike, if you could go to the next slide. We know that our youngest kids will be encouraged to wear masks, but we will not exclude anyone who is not able to wear one because of their disability. The one area where we really diverge from the kindergarten schedule is that our students will not have classes on Monday because that has been their typical schedule. They will be picking up breakfast and lunch bags, just like their kindergarten colleagues, and they will have remote learning in the afternoon. And our teachers will continue with their PLCs on Mondays.
Okay, so Charlotte is going to talk about our students at risk, EL, homeless, and academically at-risk Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. So, Charlotte?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Hi, I'm Charlotte Pellens. I'm the Director of Categorical Programs for the Vancouver Public Schools. The district is planning to bring small groups of at-risk students to the buildings for access to core instruction and intervention. This plan was created in conjunction with K-12 principals and their executive directors. School teams will select students based on risk data, engagement, attendance, and teacher input. Meals and transportation will be provided with a start date of Monday, November 30th. And Mike, back to you.
Sorry, everybody, transitioning out of the share screen, although I can bring it back if there are additional questions. Again, I'm confident that a slow and measured shift to in-person learning will benefit our students and our families. We have taken the appropriate measures to attend to student and staff safety as we have outlined in our plans this evening. Principals have worked very, very closely with staff to provide healthy and safe learning environments for all students. And again, I want to thank the team here. They've spent a lot of time and energy to construct a program that works for students in returning to school and for families. At this time, I entertain questions, Wendy, from the board, and I know the team's ready to answer questions, and I know there are questions, so.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you in advance to the staff for their patience, because there are going to be questions, so I thank you. In fact, Kathy, you indicated earlier that you had some, so do you want to go ahead and begin?
Okay, and I'm going to start this because I want it not to be misunderstood. I wholeheartedly believe kinders belong in a classroom. I don't know if any of you know, but I am currently teaching in-person preschool. And I know the value of having kids in the classroom. But my questions are going to be around the policy, the way decisions came about, and are also going to reflect community concerns, as well as questions that have popped up when I've read some of the briefings. So I wanted to be clear that kinders belong in school, but there are some definite community concerns. The first one, I'll just go in order as to how everything was presented. So I'm curious as to when Nicole and Lindsay were presenting, she said when the temperatures are triggered, the kids would be brought aside. I'm curious as to what's the temperature that they'll rate at that will cause them to have a retake temperature.
So the temperature is 100.4 or greater is what is considered a COVID symptom. However, there is some variance built into the thermal cameras. I believe it's 0.7 degrees. And so it will trigger a little bit, 0.7 degrees lower than 100.4 in order to catch anyone, because it's not as accurate as a handheld.
So 99 point whatever. Okay, and then, so I'm assuming that that's going to be communicated to the parents so they won't freak out when their kids are pulled aside?
I would assume, sorry.
If you recall, they're taken aside, but then there's a secondary thermometer check. Can you address that?
Yeah, I understood that there would be a second.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is, when those kids are pulled aside, I just want to make sure that, because people will see them kind of pulled aside, I want to make sure that our parents know what all the procedures are. Like if your kid triggers a 99, if your kid has a 99 point whatever temperature, we'll pull them aside and retake their temperature. Has that been communicated directly with the families? So they know that just because the friend of their kid in front of them who got pulled out, it doesn't mean that they had a temperature. It just meant it triggered and they had a retake, and then they were given an okay and they were sent back. Because somebody's going to come home and say, Mom, Sally was pulled out of line today because she had a temperature, but then she came back to class. So I want to make sure that our parents know that that's the protocol.
Deborah or any one of the principals, can you address that relative to what's been communicated? And certainly, yes.
Yes, that has been communicated from VPS, from principals. Yes.
Okay. So working where I work currently, a very succinct protocol visual was sent to all the parents about this triggers this, then this triggers this, then this triggers that. This is how we do this. This is when you would be asked to quarantine. This is when the class would be asked to quarantine. And so I want to make sure, have the parents received or the families received a visual that details the steps involved in safety protocol involving COVID, not just an email or, you know, in the VPS 123, but they've received a visual protocol.
Well, I know it's on the website, Kathy, so I will need to go and look and see exactly what that is. I know that they received information, but I think you're asking, I'm not sure. It sounds very specific, so.
Yeah, and that is specific. We'd have to go back and check specifically.
So I need to check.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm saying we have posted the protocols since, well, late summer, early fall, and those have been updated relative to practices, including what is in the student handbook. And that has all been communicated to parents, not only from the district, but by the schools.
And can I cut in really quick? Lindsay talking here.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay.
So we have the COVID-19 response plan, and in that is some very detailed responses for when there is close contact or symptoms. There's also a broader just flow chart that has really nice visuals that was developed by ESD 112 in conjunction with the Clark County Health Department. And that is available on the website. And in addition to that, yes, it's available on the website, but it was also what we presented to the families who listened in on the October 8th K-5 hybrid instruction returning. So if they were there for that, they would have seen those items as well. Obviously, since then, they've been updated. And as we've mentioned before, we continually update as we get those frequent updates from both Washington Department of Health and Clark County Public Health and ESD 112.
Great. And the reason why I ask is because even where I'm currently teaching, well, the parents are involved. They still have questions, and all I have to do is hand them the visual that says, these are the steps that would need to be taken. And anytime that there has been somebody that tested positive at our school, they, whenever they send a note to the whole school community, they include that to remind people, this is how this works. It's just nice to have the visual. So that's why.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, too, I quickly want to detail that if a student were to display any of the Class A or Class B symptoms, a note would be provided by the building administrator to also kind of detail out what next steps need to be completed by the parent.
Great, thank you. And just one more thing for Nicole and Lindsay, maybe. So what is the protocol if a teacher in a building, not a teacher, but if a teacher of a classroom tests positive? So a kinder teacher, we go back next week, a kinder teacher tests positive, now what do we do?
So every situation is going to be different, so I cannot answer a blanket response on this because everything is going to be a call to the health department and they're going to help guide response. So I want to just start with that disclaimer.
We just kind of do that yesterday, so I get it.
So, okay. So one thing, we did get some recent guidance from Clark County Public Health on when how to guide response. And one of those things are if two or, dismiss the entire classroom for 14 days, or if 2 or more laboratory positive COVID-19 cases occur within the group or cohort within a 14-day period. So that's 2 or more. If you're asking specifically about a teacher though, what to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defer that piece to Deborah. Is that as far as getting a sub?
Well, I can tell you that the sub pool is deeper and deeper. HR is working hard on that, has a list, and we would make sure that the sub was going to be there. Absolutely.
But it wouldn't trigger an automatic quarantine in that kindergarten class.
I think what's important, and I think Lindsay spoke to this, they're going to be unique cases depending upon exposure or no exposure. And we would listen carefully, very carefully to Clark County Public Health in terms of their guidance. What might be true and take place at one classroom may be different than another classroom in another school, given the circumstances that, you know, from which the case came to bear with a particular teacher. So I think that Lindsay spoke to the guidelines that would be followed, whether or not there were one or two cases. And again, we're going to listen carefully to our partners at Clark County Public Health. I'm sure we would come to an agreement as to, yes, this is the right choice to be asking students or staff, additional staff that might have even come in contact with the teacher to quarantine. So that is always the possibility. And Kathy, as you well know, there are a lot of variables that can play into that.
Right. It's a question that I've been asked and I didn't have an answer for. I didn't have a specific answer for, mostly because it is a variable, but I wanted to at least have that out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can imagine the lines of communication would be wide open with Clark County Public Health relative to our response and need to take care of everybody.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna take the floor and then let somebody else speak for a while.
No, I just have a quick,
but I don't want to take over everybody. Sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
no, I just wanted a quick follow-up on that question. I don't want to stay too much in specific scenarios, but in the case that a sub was needed because a teacher tested positive, I'm assuming the communication protocols, the families in that classroom would find out.
We do have communication protocols in place that we have used when employees have been notified. They're very clear processes, and we're going to be really transparent about that in the event that that would surface. But yes, there would be communication with families immediately.
Well, I mean, of course, HIPAA, and we want to protect the privacy, but also making sure that families have information to make smart decisions in their own circles.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can I just jump onto that? Are these written policies so everyone knows when something's reported and how it's reported and in what way?
Go ahead, Kamara.
Well, also,
sorry.
I know sometimes there's the guidelines that come from the health department. Is there specific school policies that are different or maybe more, have more strength?
There are practices that I think Lindsay or Nicole could remind us of that we are currently following and that we would follow. There would be the same practice that would be followed or expected to be followed at each school. Lindsay or Nicole, do you want to add anything to that?
Just my only thing is when there is a positive case at a school, we do have a very specific line of communication that we go down and we make sure that we check each box of were there any, and the first step is always, was anybody exposed, and determining who was exposed, because that's obviously the top priority of people who are known exposures. Other than that, then we start going down the list of who all needs to be notified.
I have one more question for Nicole and Lindsay. I don't know if now would be a good time.
Sure.
Yeah. So thank you for the presentation. Very informative. The health monitoring, sorry, what was the HRA?
Health room annex?
Yes, health room annex. Sorry, I wrote HRA as my notes. Who's responsible for monitoring that health room annex?
Well, I'm going to have Deborah take that one. At the HRA monitoring at each of the schools.
Yeah, right now it's administrative work, but there is conversation going on about who else can help with that, because clearly it's going to need more than one person. And there are monitors that have been purchased so that you can certainly keep an eye on things even if you're a few feet away. Not that you would leave a sick child, but as long as you can see that child and you don't have to be right on top of that situation. So we're still working on that with some of the labor group conversations, but right now our nurses and our administrators are well versed in that.
And I just quickly want to add, this is Nicole, that the details of who those health room monitors are documented in the school-specific health room annex protocols. And as one item we forgot to mention, so it's a perfect time to mention it now, is as anything changes in that school-specific plan, it is also detailed in the plan how those changes or revisions will be communicated to building staff so they are made aware.
I have a question to follow up on the rooms. Because I know earlier you said it'll kind of depend on what the building is, what the room is. I'm just wondering, is the room large enough so that if there are several kids that have to be in that room, that they will be spread? Like, if it's a classroom space, I could see how you could spread them out. But if it's like a small office space, you might have 3 kids in the room that are kind of sitting next to each other, and then, hey, 2 were okay, but the one actually did have COVID, but they were sitting next to 2 kids that were okay. Are there thoughts about?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So yes, well, first of all, which room they choose for the HRA varies greatly, but some of them are classrooms, yes. So one of the things that we have come up with is our maintenance department has built or is in the process of building like these dividers made out of PVC pipe and a flame retardant plastic, because the fire marshal came through recently and they really plugged that flame retardant plastic for us. So we bought a whole bunch of it, and they've built these 6x6 barriers with a plastic sheeting to separate students in the HRA so that they're not going to get an exposure to another student.
I'm sorry, I want to backseat. So when we were talking about how people are notified and in what circumstances, I feel like those policies need to be in writing that the families and the teachers and everyone knows, so that they can decide okay, so you're not going to tell me in this situation, but you're going to tell me in this situation. So that's how I can determine if I'm going to get enough information to decide for my family or for my, for my employment, what I want to do. So that was my question. I'm suggesting that that would be something I personally would need to know that you're, giving me the information that I needed and I could trust that information. And I come from a point where I'm saying this at my office, where I know our office gives certain information while the jail gives different information. And I don't want the jail's information. I want my office's information. I want you to just pound me with it. And then I get to decide whether or not I want to go to the jail or not go to the jail.
Okay, Kamara, thank you. I'll follow up with the team relative to that. I think I think we have some of that already in our guidelines, and I think we just need to lift that out and ensure that is communicated thoroughly.
Yeah, I was going to more or less say the same thing, Mike. I feel like we have seen some of that thinking in some of our briefings and some of the documents that have been shared with the board, but I don't know that it's something that the parents have necessarily seen. I have a question, actually, since we're just hammering Nicole and Lindsay right now, I've got a question for them too. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
With regard, you mentioned with the health room annex being there being PPE, a supply of PPE for the staff that works at. Can you kind of just clarify what PPE will be provided for that staff?
Yeah. So restock each day should be 8 face shields, 15 gowns, a box of gloves, a box of surgical masks, and 10 KN95s.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming, I think Deborah kind of mentioned this, there's a good chance that there might be more than one staff member staffing that room in a given day.
Yes, yes. And not only is there a good chance already, but we are also working on how to possibly expand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question is, has there been any discussion in terms of PPE for the kindergarten teachers themselves? And let me give you some background. The reason why I ask this is because in the Washington Department of Health guidance, it kind of has this spectrum of where the different risk levels are. There's a low risk, medium risk, or high risk, etc. And a lot of it has to do with the ability to kind of follow these different protocols like social distancing and wearing a mask like with consistency. And with kindergartners, keeping, 6 feet apart and making sure those masks are on their faces for the entire 3 hours, plus if they're there, is far more challenging. So we had conversations in terms of providing KN95 masks to kindergarten teachers.
We have, Wendy, I'll just cut to that. We have noted that those will be available for the kindergarten teachers if they choose to use them.
Okay. And I'm assuming any paras or anyone else that might be working closely with that class as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That was it. That's all I have for the
I have one.
Kamara, more?
Sorry, just one quick question. So
Okay.
I know, and I love this, that people can jump in or jump out. So they can decide they're going to be in and they can decide they're going to be out. If someone jumps in, if these parents that have said they didn't want to be in and they all of a sudden realize that there's less risk, what happens? The numbers spread out. Are we going to be able to accommodate that? Or, what's going to happen when there's more kids in the classroom?
So I'm going to ask Deborah to address that because she's worked closely with the principals on that very topic.
Well, and Kamara, that's just such a good question and such an unpredictable one. It's a good one to raise. We are going to have to, in some ways, cross bridges as we get there, but we know that with only K returning, we also have some empty classrooms in the building. We have teachers who are in the other grades who are teaching fully remotely, and we may have to expand a classroom. We know we will not go over 10 kids. We know that. And therefore, if a particular room is over 10 or projected to be over 10, we have to get back to the table with the principal and the teacher team and say, what are we going to do about this? If there's a room that is significantly under 10 and one that's at 10, we would have to work with parents and say, here is the place where we have space. So we're going to do it one by one by one. The principals are really dialed into that. We are anticipating that some parents may make that very request, and we have some processes in place for communication with parents, between parents and principals, that will start that work. It's a good question.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I know we don't have the answers to everything. Knowing that we don't have the answers is the start. So
yes, well, and yes, I appreciate that. And we're starting with such small numbers in most of the classes that we already know going in, we've got some wiggle room before we'll get there.
So I have a follow-up to that question. In regards to the numbers, I know that the chart that we received is based on the, basically putting those 43% of families that didn't respond into in-person. And now I think it was indicated that at the building level, the principals are reaching out to make sure that the families want to participate in person or might switch to remote only. Is that data being collected and pooled still at the district level? I mean, as those allocations change, because when the principal reaches out to a family that has been automatically assigned to in-person, is that still being monitored at the central office level?
We will be. The principals are in the process of communicating. They received that data last week. So I don't imagine that, and they might have already contacted all of those families, but we'll know. I think we'll have a better idea of, before the end of the week here is out or early next week, who they've been able to reach, and we'll be able to note that. There's a process that was provided by the SIS team for the buildings to use to move a student from, or at least to place a student once we know, because like I said, there are some who have not responded. So once we know, for example, they're saying, yep, we're going to be in person, then we would note that within the system.
As we've contacted parents this past week, we've turned all of that information into SIS and updated it at our building level. So it is updated at the district level already,
okay.
as we ongoing.
Thank you. That's what I was looking.
Yes.
I just had a quick question about preschool. I know in the presentation it looked like the preschool has AM and PM sessions. AM will come 2 days a week in the morning, and PM will come 2 days a week in the morning. Is there any consideration for keeping the kids that are in the PM session coming 2 days in the PM instead of morning?
Yeah, we had thought of that, but we're trying to, like I said, keep things consistent with kindergarten for transportation and food services. We also surveyed all of our parents and reached out and called all of the parents who we didn't get feedback from, and didn't hear, and we heard tonight that there was a concern. Right. Yeah, but we hadn't heard concerns previously about that.
Okay, I just worried about the scheduling piece, if that was going to impact families of having to move to a morning session.
I want to comment. I just think that's great, Laura, that like people don't understand that you guys actually have been canvassing and getting that information and making your best decisions on the information that you were given at that time. And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everything you guys have done trying to get this together.
Well, thanks. We appreciate hearing that.
Thank you. Other questions?
I actually have a couple. Surprise! I have a couple more, Mike.
That's okay. We're ready.
I will too. I promise.
First of all, hearing Deborah talk about the principals, and having to juggle this when there's a chance that some parents who we haven't heard from are going to choose an option that we did not anticipate, or rather they might choose after a couple of weeks later to change their mind as well, and juggling all of that. So I know, Katie, you're on the call. I'm just going to say a shout out to my kids' principal and all the other principals. Thank you in advance, because that's not an easy job to do. And I can't even imagine having to try to juggle that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a question about, I want to give Deborah and any other staff to kind of respond to a concern that was definitely expressed tonight in public comment and has been expressed in lots of emails that the staff or the board has been getting. And that is the equity piece between students who choose the in-person learning versus families who choose the full remote in terms of instruction from the teachers. So can you talk a little bit about, it was kind of mentioned in the presentation, but I'm asking for maybe just a little bit more detail. In terms of live instruction that's available to students who are going to remain in full remote, how much live instruction are they going to have access to for a week?
I can speak to that a little. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Patrick.
I can speak to that a little bit. Part of it is going to depend on the schools and the teachers as well, but there's a minimum on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, that there'd be a half an hour live instruction between the students in person and remote. Wednesday, there's also that 30 minutes in the morning of synchronous social emotional time, along with a core lesson that would be live. And then this is where, we can't, as I think Lindsay said earlier, there's not necessarily a blanket statement we can make to this, but there's some different options for what the teachers can do. They had a live streaming professional development opportunity, so they could be providing live instruction to the students in front of them, but also putting that out to their students at the same time, and then sending out the activities through Zoom or through CSAR, one another platform they might be using. Additionally, the teachers could be teaching their lesson in front of the students, recording that, and then pushing out that recorded instruction to those students who are at home. Another option that some teachers are considering is that they are pre-recording lessons of what they would be delivering to their students in person and pushing those out to the students along with the activities so that they are getting similar instruction to those students live. You can imagine there's challenges in each of those areas, but there's benefits as well.
But those are still not live, the ones that you mentioned before.
Well, there is the live streaming would be considered live, yeah, but not in person, obviously, because the students are at home.
No. I understand the in-person versus live, but the last two options, the last two things that you mentioned were not live instruction. They were
correct. They still would be the live synchronous time, but those other, when they have their 30 minutes on a minimum of 30 minutes. And some people may choose to go beyond that, but that's the minimum set. And then, of course, the Wednesday would be live as well, but those other two, you're correct, would not be live at the moment.
So,
And I want to add an anecdotal, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Wendy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add an anecdotal note, because what we described is kind of like that minimum that we're expecting teachers to do, is that having a 30-minute live connection. But when I've talked to my kinder teachers, their whole goal, they made sure they had a specific meeting with me to ensure that I knew that their goal is to make sure that the kids that are on the fully remote option have an equitable education. It's not going to be the same, but they're working very hard to do that, and it's not possible to give them the exact same live instruction. It's not going to be minute by minute, but our teachers are working their tails off to make sure that whatever that remote option is for those students, they're still their students. They want the students to have as much of an educational experience as the kids that are live in class.
And there may be some instances where it wouldn't make sense to be live streaming. We talked about when we have students coming in person, that's the first experience that most of these kids have had in a school setting. So we're going to be talking with them about what are some of the procedures in the classrooms. How do you go about some of the expectations when you're in the building, and that wouldn't necessarily apply to those students who are at home too. So like Katie said, our teachers are very flexible, and a lot of them have come up with ideas that we haven't even thought of as well. So we're excited to see what opportunities that they're presenting to our students and families.
And as principals, every single one of us has already met with our kinder teams to talk about what it's going to look like at our school. So one of the biggest things we've talked about as a principal group is site-based collaboration to support both instruction and safety. So like when we're talking to the kinder team and we're talking about, okay, hey, here's the PPE options as another reminder on top of our 3-hour training we had a while back, just so it's fresh in their minds, like, hey, here are the options. Let's make sure that we get you set up for the PPE, as well as when we're talking as a team. And I was pretty proud of the teachers at Salmon Creek. They're like, we want to provide 100% of our energy to the kids who are in front of us, because it supports both the safety and maximizing learning for those kids for those 3 hours, because that's what they felt would maximize those two areas.
So can I ask, and I appreciate everything that everyone has said. I know our kindergarten teachers are amazing. We really, I mean, they are amazing.
They walk on water, I just want to say.
And so I guess one of my concerns here is I know that they are going to go above and beyond for their students, because they do. That's what they do every day. But when I'm looking, I guess I have one more question, and then I want to follow up with the thought. And that is for the kids that are, okay, so you've got like pod A, for example, who are there 2 days a week. Then they're at home 3 days a week. On the days that they're at home, I'm assuming they're still getting asynchronous instruction of some kind.
Deborah could answer that. Yeah.
Yes. And any principal can chime in too, but absolutely, we are trying to work really hard to make sure that happens, Wendy. And the teachers, you know, the kids will go home at 11:30 at 19 of our schools, and teachers need a break and teachers need a lunch, but that still leaves a full afternoon. So we're just confident that that's what can happen. Yes.
Right, but in that afternoon, they'll be doing at least 30 minutes of live instruction for their fully remote students.
At minimum, yeah. And we had proposed an hour, but that wasn't agreed upon. So we were able to agree on 30 minutes. Here's what I think I know about K teachers after many, many, many years of loving them in the building. They're not going to stop with minimum. They just aren't. So we do feel like as people get more comfortable with the technology and with the recordings and the live streaming, I think they're going to be poised for increasing that. I do.
And I absolutely agree with you. And that's, I guess, where my concern is coming from on behalf of those kindergarten teachers. I feel like we're asking a whole lot of them here. And I've got to imagine that that's raising the anxiety levels for our kindergarten teachers quite a bit. And I really appreciate what Bobby said earlier, and how important it is to be flexible and forgiving and allow for a lot of grace for our kindergarten teachers. But it's going to be pretty messy, you know, in a lot of cases as they figure all of this out and figure out the balance between pod A and pod B in the remote learning group. Because I can't, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how they can manage 3 separate groups of students on 3 different tracks, kind of doing different things at different times. That's a lot of managing and organizing and planning. And but I also I'm going to come back to this concern for the students who are in person. They're receiving 6 hours of in-person instruction plus additional asynchronous lessons. For full remote, it's not anywhere near that amount. And so one of my questions is, have we explored the idea of assigning a kindergarten teacher for just remote students? And I know that would require shifting around a lot of students, and that's not an easy solution. But have we looked at the possibility or the feasibility of doing something like that?
Or if I can also ask, on top of that, I have a friend who is a kindergarten teacher. She has 19 kids total. 10 are opting for in-person and 9 are opting for remote. Wouldn't it make sense in her case, and this is where flexibility and looking at what makes sense for students, wouldn't it make sense for her to have, since we're going up to 10, have those 10 in person on like Monday, Tuesday, and then let her do remote on Thursday, Friday with those 9 that want to stay in remote, rather than blanket, everything looks the same, doing something like that. Anyway, it's sort of back on Wendy's, piggybacking on Wendy's question.
Let me speak to that. We've spent a lot of time talking about that with as a team, and the sheer number of variables in terms of the movement of students in and out of in-person to remote or remote back into in-person, and the variance, the flexibility we've provided folks there, and in assigning a teacher certain students, it's not possible to account for that variance and also assure that we are not going to have overloads or have only classes where there may only be 5 students, and yet now we have all of these students who want to be in person, and we've got 5 students with 1 teacher, and we have, then it creates an overload elsewhere in the system. And again, that's going to be a variance across the system and between schools. So we did look at that, but it's just not a practical solution relative to how students are assigned to teachers, and the flexibility that we've provided families to move in and out of that. And then again, like I said, it creates overloads or underloads, if you will.
But if you are talking about flexibility and grace, and really, as you know, Wendy's mentioned, this is an equity issue for me here. And if our students are choosing to go remote for health and safety reasons that we are not unaware of, and so many of our students, if we just say that proportionally wise, some of the students that are choosing to go remote are among our most vulnerable populations, our free and reduced lunch, our ELL students, our other, and we are only going to offer them 2.5 hours of live instruction versus the other instruction that's being offered. The inequity of that offering is just painful to me. We can't do that to these kids. It just doesn't seem right. It isn't right. And I believe these kinders a lot of these kinders need to go to school, but we have received email after email after email from parents who, for very amazing reasons, cannot send their kindergartners to school. And I'm not going to go, I could list all these reasons. And what we're telling them is, well, you're choosing between, like the mom said tonight, well, you're going to have to choose between the health of Mr. So-and-so or your kid's education. That's not a choice that a school district should be giving to a family. A school district should be giving to the family, here is your option. Here are your two options. You can go in for live in person and get this much education, and you can also get that much education on remote. But that's not the option we're giving our kindergartners right now. And I do not in any way want to diminish all the hard work that all of you have done. I appreciate it all. I really and truly do. But I also know that the kindergarten teachers are incredibly concerned about their kids that are going to be on remote. And to say that our kindergarten teachers are going to rise to the cause, well, of course they're going to rise to the cause, but that's not fair to them either. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to rant, but this has really been on my heart. Thanks.
I feel like this is a work in progress. I love what Kathy said, because these are things that we can see how they work out and how we can improve them as we go along, because we're not going to know that until we start. And I do understand her separate but equal argument. But what I will say, it isn't separate but equal for the minorities and the other the other disenfranchised people. They are not having the same online experience as the others right now. So I feel like as a school district, we're going like this. We're finding our balance, and I appreciate that's what we're doing right now. I completely agree with you, Kathy. And there's this other flip side I completely agree with as well. Our country's just gone through a giant thing where people have been on these opposite sides, and we get these emails. And it's kind of interesting to me, because there's these parents who've been advocating for their kids, and they're like the ones that you're talking about. And then there's these other parents who don't ever get to advocate for their kids because they don't have the means, they don't have the avenue. And when we do hear from them, kids are failing. They're failing this process. It's not a product of our district. It's not a product of our teachers. It's just the world's crazy right now. So we're going to have to keep adjusting as we're going. Your concerns need to be at the forefront, Kathy. I completely agree. We're going to need to start making some adjustments there. I do like you said, we've got to get the kinders back in there. So we have to make that adjustment first before we wave back. And that's kind of what this is. And I appreciate all your comments. And I, again, appreciate all the work you guys have done. But I can tell you there is another failing group right now that's been failing.
Thank you, Kamara. I just wanted to add, I think this is an exciting opportunity because there are families that need, as many of you know, I have a kindergartner myself. Zoom is not the most effective way to educate a kindergartner. I see this as an opportunity, and I really appreciate this presentation tonight and all the effort that's gone into it. Perhaps because I'm a kindergarten parent, I've not just received the emails to my district account. I've been inundated when I'm at the park or at the grocery store, and every situation and every story is unique, and the circumstances are unique. And so I'm not advocating against this kindergarten in-person plan. The resounding feedback I've gotten is that because grandma lives in our home, or because mom is recovering from cancer, or because my son has severe asthma, we cannot make this choice. And we feel like we're being penalized because we have a medical vulnerability. So again, I'm not advocating against this plan. I guess I just am asking or encouraging that the remote option continues, as Kamara said, to be a work in progress, that we continue to really refine how we connect with those families, those students, to keep them engaged, because remote learning is not easy, especially if you're a 5-year-old. But there are just some families, and it's not because they're choosing to be overly cautious, it's because they truly have a need. And so I just encourage the district to continue evolving this. And there's the flip side of that as well, because I think Wendy brought this up. I think she was asking a question. She's been interrupted 3 times.
Sorry, Wendy.
But I do think that it's a balancing act. And as we continue to refine our offerings to accommodate all of our students, we also do have to be sympathetic to the teachers and the staff. And I don't want our community to feel penalized because they can't opt in, and that we just need to continue working on this so our plan can evolve with all of our families regardless of the situation. But I applaud you all. I mean, this presentation was done kind of as a courtesy for the board. It's an administrative decision. This is not subject to board vote, and you put an amazing presentation. So I want to thank you for your effort. I just implore you to continue keeping those remote only students in mind.
And Kyle, I want to say that I appreciate these remarks, that yours and Kamara on the same topic, absolutely. And I'm going to make you a promise that I think your words about work in progress for remote learning are exactly what we ought to be living by. And I can guarantee you that the principals will be getting back together, both with their kindergarten teams and with me, and we'll keep it in mind as we go forward. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I know that anxiety levels are high. Our cases, we're on a different trajectory right now, and I think everyone responds differently. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the ongoing kind of consideration, because families, I think Kamara said it, they're going to be flexing in and out because there's just going to be nervousness. And so ongoing flexibility and just consideration for those that can't opt in, I think, is critical.
Thanks, Kyle. I know in many of our conversations with the team here, we're looking at all options, and we will continue to do that. I think, and when I say that, I'm extending that to all of those conversations that take place between the team here at the district office and principals, and spoken to principals as well too about the great conversations. And I think several of our principals talked tonight about the conversations they're having with their kindergarten teachers and trying to meet the needs of all of the kids and families. So, and I think they're a great representation of all of our elementary principals and the efforts with their respective teams. So thank you.
I have one more question, but Wendy, it's your turn.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on the same topic, and that is, Kyle, you made the statement a couple minutes ago that this is not necessarily something that needs board approval, but I think that we do have obviously a responsibility to ensure that all of our students are getting access to an equitable education, not the same education. And Deborah, I appreciate what you said earlier about clearly it's not going to be identical for remote students and students who are learning in person, and the students who are able to come in person. It's a wonderful opportunity for them, and I'm really excited to have our kindergartners come back, or not even come back, come into our buildings, right, for the first time, and that's super exciting. But I really struggle with the families who have, through no fault of their own, have to make the decision to keep their students remote. And I don't want them feeling like that's another sacrifice, because they have obviously made sacrifices already. So I just want to be, and I also understand it's kindergarten, so I get that, you know, they're going to be on campus for 3 hours. That's not 3 hours of like learning necessarily. There's a lot of movement around the building, and that's slower with kindergartners, and there's lots of transitions, and that's slower with kindergartners. And so I understand it's not as easy as saying minute per minute, this much live instruction for remote and this much live instruction for in-person. I just want to really make sure that it's being tended to, and that those kindergarten teachers, and I appreciate everything the principals have said about the conversations they've had with kindergartners, but I would hazard a guess that those conversations in some cases may have involved some tears, frankly, because it's an overwhelming thing to think about. And our teachers have literally worked miracles this year. Our kindergartner teachers maybe a little bit more than most. And to say that it's going to be okay because they'll just keep working their miracles, I think is a little bit unfair to the kindergartner teachers. And frankly, I think when we put that much pressure and we have those unrealistic expectations, the reality is that it impacts the quality of education that's being delivered because they can't, it gets to the point where it's untenable. And I want to make sure we're not getting to that point where it's untenable and it's creating a negative impact on the education that's being delivered. So I agree it's a work in progress. I agree it's going to be messy. It's not going to be pretty in a lot of cases, especially at the beginning. And I think everybody appreciates that and everybody is willing to be flexible and be forgiving. But I also want to make sure that it's not just here's the plan and we put it in motion and now our kindergarten teachers are just left there to figure it out all on their own. And I know that's not the intention of the staff. And I know, Deborah, I know you and I know your heart and I know that your heart is absolutely in this plan and you're not just going to leave them out there to dry. I know that. I want to make sure that the supports that those kindergartner teachers need are going to be ongoing, in place, built upon, and that they're going to get whatever they need to get in order to make this successful.
Well, I guarantee you it will not be for lack of trying if they don't. And I just and we've got as many variations in our schools and teachers as we do people in our community. I walked into a school last week and they have two kindergarten teachers and they stopped me in the office and said, why won't you let our kids come back? This was before the announcement, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago. And I said, wait, what? How did I get to be the bad guy here? So we had a great conversation because they're saying we've got a plan and we want them back. So I think we can also leverage those teachers who have been maybe mulling this over for a while because they know better than any of us what it looks like. So we will work as hard as we know how, Wendy, to make sure those needs are met. And then we'll tap into those people out there who know the very best. And that's the teachers to say what isn't working, what is working, how do we build this? How do we build this? Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to speak to the anxiety level of our kindergarten teachers. While this part of the board meeting has been going on, I have been receiving texts from 6 different kindergarten teachers who are my friends, and they are already at breaking point. And to say that we're just gonna let the teachers, and again, I understand that we're in a work in progress and all this, but to say that our kindergarten teachers are amazing and they're going to do this, and what I'm concerned about, because I have had friends tell me this, is that one of the answers to them when they start to worry about those kids in remote under the current plan that aren't getting equitable education, when they start to worry about that they're going to be told, well, that's not in the plan. You need to do X, Y, and Z. Because I know they've been told, like, you need to do your in-person learning and your half an hour every day. And if that's stressing you out, you can't do any more, don't worry about it. They need to know what to do when they feel like those kids are falling through the cracks. There needs to be part of the growth of this plan needs to be, how do we support those kids in remote, not on the backs of the kindergarten teachers. So,
Wendy, do you have anything else? I feel like so just in regards to the teacher, I will say that the board has received quite a bit of feedback as well from educators who have their own personal concerns about family members. They're high risk themselves. And they're making difficult choices too. I'm curious how many of our kindergarten teachers have exercised the leave option for going back into school?
I'm going to ask Kathy to speak to that.
Sure. Of the 85 kindergarten teachers that we have 7 that will have requested leave. We have 1 school that was able to resolve the issue in building with another teacher that they have that will be taking that person's place when they take leave. And we have 6 long-term subs that have accepted positions when they're ready to go. We trained our long-term subs yesterday, and we're trained about 30 casual subs also yesterday, so that they're ready to hit the ground running when we need long-term subs for our K teachers, or we need casual subs so that they understand how to use hybrid, digital learning, as well as live streaming, and being able to do synchronous and asynchronous posting. So we worked with those folks, and we feel really good about that. And again, these teachers come back to their same assignments when they're ready to come back. They do not lose their positions with our district, and they are able to go back into those positions. So it is able to give some folks some relief and be able to take care of the needs that they have with their family as they take and the type of leave that they're afforded.
That's less than I thought was going to happen. That's good to hear. Not as much turnover at the kindergarten level. That's terrific. Thank you, Kathy.
Have the families of the teachers that are taking leave, have they been notified? So if my student's teacher is taking leave, do I know yet as a parent?
I would have.
Yeah, so I think that really is going to be, Deborah would be able to answer
Yeah.
that, because what we did is how the principals were given this information of who was, when we did an earlier survey, who might be interested in taking leave. They followed it with staff. Some of the staff changed their mind, said, no, I don't need to. They're more comfortable. But a couple others decided that they were going to, because things changed in their families. So I think what the principals do, like they normally do, and Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong, my principals can, if there's a change in any kind of teacher, they usually always send a letter to the parents. They announce that change. They introduce the person coming on. They take that time to do that. I don't see that there would be any change in that. So with those classrooms, my expectation, I'm sure Deborah and the principals is, that's exactly what would happen. A letter would go out to those families letting them know about the change.
Yes, absolutely. Katie, do you want to make a quick note? Yeah.
Well, I was gonna share what we've already done at our school, because we did have one of our teachers have to go out on leave. The teacher is working really closely with the long-term sub. I sent a letter. The teacher also sent a personal letter. And then we invited the long-term sub, myself, and the teacher all joined their community circle in the morning, where the kids were able to ask questions to the teacher. The teacher could kind of get like a little face. We like showed them what we looked like with our masks on, so they could see, you know, because we're gonna look different when we get to school. But we did our very best to introduce as soon as we knew who the person was. And then the teacher, as part of her tri-pay and different things, we're gonna have her do a couple transition things via Zoom with the kids to help with that transition, because the kids have bonded with her. And we tried our very best to make it so we talked about, this is your remote person, this is the person that started you online, and this is going to be your in-person teacher, to kind of clarify for the kids why the change was happening. But the kids were great. It was it was the favorite part of my day, was going to that Zoom.
That's so awesome. That's terrific.
Well, I appreciate the flexibility we've given to those teachers who need to take leave. Obviously, the fear of losing placement would impact a person's decision, and we don't want to put teachers in hard choices. Families are in hard choices. It's hard. I assume we have the flexibility going forward, and this might not just apply to K, but as we get more grades in the building, that as situations change with families, teachers' families, that they would have the opportunity to exercise, but still return to their current placement next year. Okay. Obviously, the theme of the night is flexibility.
Sorry, Kyle. Yes, that is correct.
So the theme of the night is also equity. So which brings me to actually, it was one of my very first questions in reviewing all of this. I hear, we get a lot of emails on this issue, but I know that there are huge populations that we're not hearing from. And there are a lot of people that are out there speaking for these populations, but what we need to be doing is reaching out to these populations. And I'd like to know if anybody has contacted as this group, like viewing them as stakeholders, which they are, reached out to discuss what's going on with this plan, with these particular families. Surveying is not an equitable way to find out what's going on with these types of families. Be clear that there's a lot of statistical analysis you have to do if you're surveying for equity. So I'm wondering, how are we reaching out to these families?
So as I shared earlier in the presentation, the principals, I shared with you the detail by one school. Ironically, it was Anderson. Katie was just speaking. They received an even more detailed spreadsheet by class where it listed each student who had responded to the survey, the family, or had not. And they are reaching out, every principal and their team are reaching out to those families to identify their interests and what they intend to be doing, whether or not they're going to be in remote or be in person. So I think that's a big lift, and I think it speaks to the Herculean effort that principals are making, trying to reach these kindergarten families and truly understand, to your point, Kathy, what their interests are and what their needs are. And as they do that, this comes back to Kyle's question then, we are centralizing that we put processes in place where the student information system is the collection point for that data, relative to family interests. And then I imagine with some of those phone conversations, principals are also learning more about what's been going on in the life of that student. And that ultimately is going to feed and inform the work between principal and teachers, and ultimately teachers and children when they're in the building.
If I could just, I actually want this meeting to end so bad because my back hurts. But if I could jump onto what Kathy said, I think that's great what you said, Mike. And I think it's actually like, it's so detailed. But I think like the point is, are we talking to LULAC? Are we talking to the NAACP? Are we talking to the Boys and Girls Club to hear from these students whose parents are never going to respond to you? Are we talking to those groups to hear about those students? And I'm not saying that you should have yet. It would be great, but it's like something for us to consider as we're moving forward, because there's these disenfranchised students that have organizations that are hearing their needs of that community. And that's something that we should keep into consideration as we move forward. And I'm speaking really fast because I'm hoping nobody asks any more questions.
Yeah. And let me just, and I'll try to be real fast here too, Kamara. I know that the Family Community Resource Centers and the work that Tamara and team are doing, that they are connecting with families as well through those processes. And I'm sure they're hearing loud and clear about the needs.
Yeah, and I just want to also add that the survey data that was sent out a few weeks ago, we have analyzed that by demographics. So we are aware of the families or the communities who are interested in returning versus not.
So you had a demographic breakdown from.
That's correct.
Nice. Okay, that wasn't. We didn't get that as part of our briefing, so that's very nice to know. I'd love to see that.
Kathy, just so you know, I just got it this afternoon.
Okay.
So you know what, we're like I said, we're generating this as we go here. We got to another level. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to say, and Mike, that's almost a perfect example. I know that, like you said, we're getting more and more information every day, and the board has been receiving a ton of information. which I think really helps in terms of ensuring our comfort level with regards to bringing kindergartners back into the building, because we have gotten so much information, and it's really been wonderful. And I thank you for all the efforts that's gone into providing that information to the board. There have been kind of two themes in terms of communication that the board has been getting from our community. One is the equity piece of remote versus in-person learning for those kindergartners. The other clear theme from our communication is, frankly, fear and anxiety about going back into the buildings, and lots of questions about it. It seemed counterintuitive, and Mike, you did a good job. I felt like at the beginning of the presentation addressing this, but it seemed counterintuitive that we would bring more students into our building as our county is experiencing a rapid increase in the number of COVID cases locally. And I know that this is something that the DOH guidance, the state guidance has allowed for this since the beginning of the year. And as you pointed out, other districts like Evergreen have been doing this since the beginning of the year. We haven't changed the metrics we're using to determine or to make this decision. The metrics have been there to allow for this all along. It's just that we're doing it now rather than earlier.
Correct.
So, but I do have concerns about the level of anxiety that our staff and our families, the families have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the choice. The staff has some flexibility, but not as much as our families. And I think what might be one of the causes of that is a lack of access to the information. I have gotten a ton of information. I look at it more holistically maybe, and it's convincing and it's supportive and it's and I feel good about the plan. And when I get these emails, or when the board gets these emails from our staff where they aren't feeling as confident in the plan, that indicates to me that there's a lack of information being shared with our staff maybe, or a lack of understanding. And I think it's really, really important that we do what we can to build that confidence in these plans for our staff. I don't want anyone to be scared of going into their classroom and going back to work, but we definitely have staff who are feeling afraid, frankly. And so I know that there was an early release yesterday. I don't know. I'm assuming kindergarten teachers were going over these plans as part of their early release yesterday. And hopefully a lot of this information was shared with them yesterday. But even like the question I asked earlier about, are they going to be provide KN95 masks? Are the kindergarten teachers aware that they're going to have that available to them?
I would have to ask Deborah what has been communicated, but I know that we had communicated. I remember having this conversation over 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'll need the principals to remind me, but we've been in several sessions with the K teachers, and I distinctly remember putting that in one of them, but honestly, I'd have to track back to find out. But I remember saying it to several people and typing it one time in a Zoom chat. So Wendy, I'll just have to double check myself and find out where we did that, okay?
I just want to make sure that they're getting the information they need to feel confident and excited. We want them to be excited to be, and I know they're going to present that excitement to their kindergartners no matter what, right?
Yeah.
I get that. But I want to make sure that we're doing what we can to, because it is palpable, the fear that is in these emails that are being sent to the board.
Yeah,
so
and I am sorry that not all the, not all the stakeholders do send to you, because I can tell you that I've had dozens send things to me saying we're ready to go. Let's do this. So it's clear that we've got to do it as a team, as a whole community on this one, and address those anxieties for sure.
Deborah, Wendy, I was just going to let folks know and remind, and Deborah, one of the things principals are doing when staff come back in on Friday and they're together, that's one of the things they're sitting everybody down. They're going through the protocols, they're going through that, they're answering questions, they're going to take people on a tour so they can see where things are at. They can look at the materials that are available, to the level of the PPEs available to them. So they're doing that on Friday. So a lot of this is going to happen in person to really answer those questions. So I don't want anyone to think our principals are not doing this. They're doing that personally up front with teachers when they come in, as well as with our classified staff when they come back. It's going to be so people really understand and have that comfort level. Exactly what you're getting at, Wendy, is what the principals are going to be addressing.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I'm glad to hear that. And Deborah, I want to say that we have also gotten communications from kindergarten teachers who are excited to come back.
Oh, good. Somebody's calling you. You know, Wendy, honestly, you know this already. You and I mean, I feel like we know each other. And I just, our hearts, the principal hearts are invested in supporting the teachers. And I don't come to work for any different reason than I ever did when I started teaching in 19 something.
I get that, Deborah. I get that.
So I appreciate you raising it to this conversation. And I want to just assure you and reassure you that our principals are also trying to do their very best to work on that as well.
And I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Deborah. And the last thing I want to point out, and then I'm done for the night, I think, and that is I want to clarify very clearly, and Mike, you said it, but I want to say it again because we keep getting this in our communication as well, that there is no plan at this point to expand in-person learning beyond grade, like the kindergarten grade level.
No.
It was made in one of the public comments tonight about December something or other, and that's just not the case at this point.
Yeah, I exactly, Wendy. The only, as Charlotte spoke to, we are looking at those hardest to reach students, those who are not engaged in those very, very small pod groups of 4. We've got to get to these kids, and we know they're there. We've had conversations. So that's, aside from the kindergarten students, there's that group of students that we've got to reach at each of those schools, whether they're EL students, homeless students. And I know Daniel and Laura and Charlotte have spent a lot of time and energy working with staff to that effort.
And I have 2 what should be quick questions. I hope very, very quick. And this has just been popping up in a lot of conversations I have with teachers and family members too, is there a number? Is there something that would trigger us shutting this down? Is there a COVID number, or is it go as we see? People kind of like their numbers. I'm just trying to get an answer for the people that keep
Kathy, there is not a specific number that has been identified by public health. I know that as you well hear, we work closely with Clark County Public Health, and I think individual cases what would be reviewed, as we talked about earlier, that may be unique to a building versus another. But we constantly evaluate the metrics, and we're operating off of what the department, Washington State Department, has provided for us in terms of guidance, and they haven't even set a number.
Okay. And then my second question is, because we also talked, it got lost in the excitement of the K, but we also talked about, bringing in those other populations. And there was some list of how we would determine what those other populations were. And I know that this has likely been included, but I want to make sure, because with mental health awareness, that one of the other populations we may be looking at to bring in are at risk are the teenagers that have been tagged by teachers or counselors or others as being at risk for depression, particularly given this this mess that we're in, because I just want to make sure that we have their backs too. And oftentimes teenage depression goes unnoticed And I just want to make sure that that group of people is on our list to possibly bring back in small groups. And maybe maybe Jim can speak to that, or Daniel.
Kathy, that is certainly something we're going to be taking into consideration downstream after we get the K-5 students that we talked about, those that are furthest from educational justice that we talked about, the November 30th kind of start date. We want to get them in, and then we'll move forward with secondary, because to your point, Kathy, that is certainly a population that we need to take into consideration along with the other populations of students that need a point of access in order to gain from their instruction. I also want to just loop back, if I could real quick, Wendy, just to add to the groups that are coming in to do in person. I don't want to forget about our preschoolers. I know that we talked about that really quickly towards the end, but they will too be coming in. Also too, taking into consideration some of our students with special needs. We're always looking at our students with special needs and if they're benefiting from what we call their free and appropriate education, or FAPE. So again, those students will also be continuing to receive that in-person services, and that could increase too depending on their needs.
I thank you for that clarification. I guess the reason why I made the point was because there's this kind of narrative out there that by bringing kindergartners into the classroom, it's the first phase of bringing in other grades as well, that they're looking to kind of ramp up in additional grades. And that's not the plan at this point, that in-person instruction for kindergartners should not indicate a timeline for bringing other grades.
Yeah, Wendy, we have been so focused on all of the kids that we've talked about tonight, that has not been part of our conversation. I mean, we're excited about getting kindergarten students in class. And I talked to a superintendent up north here last week, and he said one of the highlights of his year so far was when they had kindergarten students in the building. And I know that sentiment rings true for a lot of our teachers and principals, because I've heard that. I mean, it's been shared with me, and that'll be something that we can look forward to.
So
I just want to, go ahead, Kyle.
I just wanted to kind of loop back to one thing that Kathy asked about, and it relates to the data. The board has privilege to our briefings that are comprehensive, and we get to understand why kindergarten is different and it falls outside of the 75 cases per 100,000. I will say that is a very prominent question in our community, is why, if we're not meeting it, can kindergarten go in? And then there is a follow-up to Wendy's recent point. Does that mean that that's no longer relevant, and that the rest of elementary school is going on? I think there's conversation in the community about why are we changing the metrics partway through the year. So I guess I would urge, from a communications perspective, some clarification around what makes kindergarten unique, because we do know that the board knows and the executive team knows that those are young learners that are considered as part of the Washington state standards as a separate kind of class of students. But then also what our decision metrics will be going forward. And I just think that there are a lot of community members that do pay attention to the data. They're tied to it. They feel like they bought into the plan that was sold to them in August, and they just are anxious to understand what they should follow, what they should track, kind of what the rules are going forward. So again, this is not because I don't understand it, it's because I think that our community doesn't have all the access to the same information, and it might be an opportunity for some clarification about the steps moving forward.
I appreciate that.
Could I just jump in really quick? I just think it's really important too. All these people really care about the science, and it's the science that's bringing these kids back in. So it's like people always say, how come you don't get this? Why don't you understand the math? Why don't you understand that this is the deal? No, learn the science. This is the science. Our youngest learners, they are the least, they don't spread it. They spread it the least. They get it the least. So this is one of the reasons. Plus, they need it the most. They need to think. This is the science. And so you guys are using the science. They need to hear that. That needs to be your message. Push it out there.
Appreciate that.
And also, I think it's, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, we heard you loud and clear, and I think those are nice recommendations. Thank you.
the simpler, the better. No
Oh, yeah.
big, long, you know, explanation, just here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is. And I know I push this a lot, but I've come to realize, and any visual you can add is all the better. I would also just like to end my comments here. I've spoken highly of all of the kindergarten teachers, but I also want to thank all of our elementary school principals. You have also rocked it so much. I know I've been in touch with a few, but you guys are amazing, and the amount of pressure and responsibility you have been given during this time has got to be overwhelming. And we say this word all the time, unprecedented. I know you are not getting enough sleep. I know that you are under a lot of stress, and I so appreciate everything you do to support our families and our teachers, and that you are working with our kindergarten teachers to support them as they go forward on Monday. I hope that you are finding support in other places. I hope you have your go-to people, because your staff and your families need you healthy as well, both physically and mentally. So please take care of yourselves, and thank you so much for everything you've done. I'm done.
Thank you, Kathy. Wendy, I know that if there are no other questions, there is one other agenda. I don't want to, there's one other agenda topic. My job is to remind as well.
We do have one last agenda item, and that is just to appoint the committee members for the board nominating committee. And that is the first step in the process of identifying new leadership for the board in the coming year. We will be voting on that leadership at our next regular meeting. And I've asked Tracy Barrows and Kamara Banfield to be that committee or serve on that committee. And they'll be making their recommendation at our next board meeting. And I think that's it. That's our last item on our agenda.
I just wanted to take a moment to let everybody know that it is National School Psychology Week. So I want to say thank you to all the public school psychologists who do an amazing job.
Great, thank you. Wendy?
Yeah.
I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, well, I was just about to ask if there were any other comments from board directors. Tracy beat me to it, but I will ask anyway. Are there any other comments from the board directors? All right, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Thank you again to everybody for all of your help tonight and your patience with our questions. Have a good night, everybody.
You bet, thank you.